At 5:15 a.m., the alarm cuts through the silence of a small apartment. Meikawa Akihiro, drained from overtime the night before, reaches for his phone beside the bed, rubbing his eyes. He checks a system alert on his screen and confirms there are no serious failures. Relief settles in briefly as he recalls the early meeting ahead. Cold air fills the city as illuminated streets signal winter's peak. He considers how another uneventful day waits for him near the year's end. Each day follows the same pattern: commuting, working late, eating alone, then sleeping alone. Stepping outside with his briefcase in hand, he suddenly senses something unfamiliar surrounding him. The hallway distorts as Akihiro turns back toward his apartment. The door behind him vanishes without warning. A presence calling itself an interface declares that it has sent him elsewhere. His body loses balance and begins falling through a vast empty space below. A cityscape fades into darkness while strange light fragments scatter. A final farewell resounds as the world he knew disappears. Consciousness returns with the scent of earth and the sound of rustling trees. Confusion grips him in an unfamiliar forest. Time passes, and he is seen as a child in this new land, guided by a hunter and beginning a different life. Fragments of memory surface as Akihiro recalls a peaceful childhood in another world. Learning skills beside a kind elder. Grass brushes against his suit as he opens his eyes. For a moment, he believes he has overslept for work. Confusion spreads when trees surround him, instead of his apartment ceiling. Unease replaces routine concerns about attendance. Climbing over rocks, he searches for roads or buildings. Yet nothing appears beyond endless forest. Reaching a high ridge, he stares at a vast wilderness stretching to the horizon. Far from any familiar city, realization settles in. With no signs of habitation nearby, he steadies himself and begins assessing how to survive. Kneeling on the ground, Akihiro checks his work bag and gathers what little he has. A lighter, charger, and portable toolset become his only resources. Breaking a sturdy branch, he shapes it into a crude spear. Anxiety lingers as he admits his lack of survival skills, yet determination pushes him forward. Movement in the grass catches his attention. A large snake emerges, its presence immediate and threatening. Studying its color and behavior, he notices it spits venom, reacting quickly. He uses a tool from his kit to counterattack. The creature weakens and collapses. Breathing heavily, he realizes survival here will demand constant caution and resolve. After defeating the snake, a presence calling itself Sage appears before Akihiro. It explains that Sage is a guide unique to this world, and recognizes him as its partner. Trying to stay calm, he introduces himself and asks about the abilities he has gained. The unseen voice responds steadily, treating the exchange as a formal registration. Details unfold about his three main skills: Sage, Perception, and Acquisition, along with sub-skills that develop through experience. Stealth belongs to that category. He learns that stealth allows him to avoid visual detection through training and growth. Overwhelmed, he accepts that this land is truly another world, far removed from Japan. Kneeling beside the fallen snake, Akihiro asks Sage whether it is safe to eat. Following the advice to use perception, he focuses on the creature and waits for information to surface. Data appears in his mind, confirming the meat is edible and free of lethal poison. Encouraged by the result, he prepares it carefully. After cooking the flesh, he eats and regains strength. With renewed energy, he resumes exploring. Aware that he still needs shelter and water, a hidden snare trap catches his attention, proving intelligent beings live nearby. The possibility of danger forces him to prioritize defense. Finding workable stones near a river, he crafts a crude axe, securing a basic means of survival. Lying beneath tall trees, Akihiro listens to distant howls echoing through the forest. Though exhausted, he reassures himself that he is no longer defenseless. Suddenly, a loud cry rings out near the snare trap he discovered earlier. Moving through the brush, he finds a massive boar thrashing violently. Nearby stands a young girl, clearly human, facing the beast. The girl tightens her hold on a small axe, determination visible, despite her size. Akihiro hesitates, doubting that her weapon can stop such a creature. Tension thickens as the boar lowers its head to charge. Realizing delay means disaster, he braces himself. With urgency, he rushes forward to intervene. The massive boar charges, forcing the girl backward as she loses her footing. Its tusks lower toward her defenseless form, closing the distance in an instant. Before impact, a sharp strike lands against the beast's leg. Pain disrupts its momentum, and blood marks the point of contact. Akihiro positions himself between the girl and the monster, ordering her to stay behind him. Fear tightens his chest, yet he refuses to retreat. Doubt flickers in his mind as he faces a creature far larger than any normal animal. Noticing its injured front leg weakening, he steadies his breathing. If he miscalculates, and those tusks connect, everything will end. Seizing the opening created by the injured leg, Akihiro drives his weapon forward with all his strength. With a final thrust, the massive body collapses onto the forest floor. Breathless and trembling, he steps back, hardly believing he survived. Exhaustion settles in as he reflects on how close death had been. Across from him, the girl watches cautiously, still clutching her axe. Concern crosses her face as she studies him. Realizing she may not understand his words, he searches for a way to appear harmless. Slowly he kneels and sets his weapon aside, raising his empty hands to show he means no harm. As he keeps his hands raised, Sage adjusts his pronunciation and recognition. The girl suddenly understands him and confirms she is unharmed. Relief softens her expression, and she thanks him sincerely for saving her life. Gratitude fills her voice while he feels tension finally leave his shoulders. Still flustered, she accepts what she believes is a heartfelt proposal. Confusion spreads across his face as he struggles to understand her reaction. She explains that kneeling and raising empty hands is the highest sign of respect in her country. In this land, such a gesture between a man and a woman signifies a marriage proposal, leaving him stunned. In the unfamiliar forest, the girl formally accepts what she believes is his proposal. Akihiro kneels before her, stunned by the misunderstanding, and unsure how his simple gesture led to this outcome. Leaning closer, she entrusts herself to him with complete sincerity. Realizing he has unintentionally proposed, he struggles to decide how to respond in this unknown land. Akihiro Miyakawa, a 35-year-old man unfamiliar with the customs of this new world, kneels before a young girl in a forest clearing. Believing he has rescued her, he impulsively proposes marriage as a way to take responsibility. The girl reacts with surprise but does not reject him. Instead, she invites him to visit her village, leaving him confused about whether he has misunderstood the situation. Trying to manage the awkward moment, Akihiro decides to follow her to the village and sort things out later. He convinces himself that he should observe this world more carefully before making assumptions. In the village, the girl introduces herself as Lazada, a 15-year-old apprentice hunter. The revelation shocks Akihiro. Realizing the age difference, he panics and regrets his reckless proposal. He understands that his actions may have been inappropriate in this world as well. Lazada explains that at 15, she is considered an adult in her society and is allowed to marry. Akihiro feels some relief but remains uncertain about the customs of this land. Overwhelmed, Akihiro drops to his knees and apologizes repeatedly. He quickly introduces himself properly, determined to handle things more carefully from now on. After introducing himself, Akihiro explains that in his homeland a surname is ordinary and not a mark of status. Lazada listens carefully but becomes surprised, wondering if possessing a family name means he comes from nobility. Realizing that surnames in this world are reserved for nobles, he understands he has revealed something unusual about himself. Trying to prevent further misunderstanding, he politely asks her to simply call him by his given name. He hopes dropping formalities will make their interaction feel equal. Hearing his request, Lazada shyly repeats his name with honorific respect. The way she says it affects him more than he expects, and he becomes painfully aware of his lack of experience speaking with young women. Social instincts he has neglected for years fail him at once. As their conversation continues, Lazada grows embarrassed and admits she is not prepared for deeper intimacy unless they become truly close. Akihiro misreads her hesitation at first and nearly worsens the situation, then hurriedly corrects himself before causing more confusion. Standing before him with flushed cheeks, Lazada softly praises his effort to understand her feelings. Although uncertainty remains between them, both sense that careful steps will be necessary to avoid further misunderstandings. A massive beast lies motionless on the ground, its weight estimated at nearly 300 kilograms. Akihiro wonders how such a body could possibly be transported back to the village. Lazada calmly suggests they first secure the catch before worrying about moving it. Without hesitation, she begins breaking it down efficiently. Curiosity overtakes him as he observes her slender frame. Activating a strange recognition ability, he perceives numerical values tied to her skills, particularly her strength. Confusion grows as he struggles to understand how someone of her build can wield such physical power. Searching for answers, he recalls an earlier explanation about magical power. In this world, energy from the environment can be converted into usable force. What people call super strength is simply the amplification of muscles through magic. The realization reshapes his understanding of physical ability here. The concept unsettles him. Raised in a world governed by science, he now stands in a land ruled by swords and sorcery. Accepting this difference becomes unavoidable. As the sun lowers, they prepare to preserve the meat. Lazada suggests cooling it in a nearby pond before full processing begins. Practical concerns replace disbelief, and Akihiro focuses on learning how this world truly works. While walking beside the forest path, Lazada asks whether Akihiro's knowledge of processing animals comes from family tradition. He explains that his grandfather was a hunter and that he once helped him during visits. Though it was never his main livelihood, village lies about 5 kilometers ahead, and Lazada apologizes for the distance. As they move forward, Akihiro hesitates, clearly troubled by something on his mind. He mentions that there is a human settlement nearby and carefully asks a personal question he has been holding back. Gathering his courage, he admits that he is 35 years old. From his perspective, that difference must seem significant. He reminds her that he is still a stranger in this land, and wonders if she is truly comfortable with the idea of becoming his wife. Lazada answers firmly that relationships begin between strangers and grow over time. Age, in her view, is not the most important factor. She even confesses that she initially believed he looked much younger than he claimed. Noticing her expression soften, Akihiro asks if she feels uneasy. Lazada shyly reveals that she accepts the situation because it is him. Her honesty leaves him silent, realizing the weight of her trust. As they continue along the forest road, Lazada suggests they focus on living well for now. With a cheerful expression, she mentions that methods to reverse aging also exist in this world. The unexpected comment catches Akihiro off guard, leaving him puzzled by the idea of reversing age so casually. She explains that rejuvenation can be achieved through special medicines, magical devices, or even divine intervention. Walking behind her with his pack secured, Akihiro processes the information slowly. Shock spreads across his face as he wonders whether a god truly exists here. Lazada treats the subject as something ordinary, describing it as just another aspect of a land filled with magic and strange abilities. Her calm attitude contrasts sharply with his scientific upbringing. After a steady walk, they finally reach a hill overlooking a wide settlement. Lazada announces their arrival and proudly presents Taruka village. Houses, fields, and trees stretch across the landscape below. Stepping into the village streets, Akihiro studies the sturdy stone buildings and tiled roofs. The size and orderliness exceed his expectations, marking the true beginning of his new life in this unfamiliar world. Evening settles over the village as Lazada insists that Akihiro stay at her home for the night. He hesitates, feeling he should not impose, but she reminds him that he saved her life. With little room to refuse, he follows her to the doorway where her father appears to greet them. Her father studies Akihiro carefully, measuring him in silence. Lazada mentions that there is someone important he must meet. The older man's sharp gaze makes Akihiro aware of how out of place he must seem in this new environment. Without hesitation, Lazada introduces Akihiro as the man who proposed to her. The statement freezes the air between them. Her father's expression hardens instantly, while Akihiro feels sweat gather at his brow under the sudden pressure. Struggling to maintain composure, Akihiro formally introduces himself and apologizes for the abrupt situation. The tension is obvious, yet Lazada's father invites him inside to explain himself properly. The invitation feels less like hospitality and more like a test. As he steps forward, unease fills his thoughts. He imagines how he would react if the roles were reversed. With determination and fear mixing in equal measure, he prepares to face whatever judgment awaits him inside. Inside the house, Akihiro is offered a cup of herbal tea before any serious discussion begins. He thanks them quietly and tastes it, noting its unfamiliar but pleasant flavor. Lazada's mother introduces herself warmly, observing him with polite curiosity, while setting the teapot down. A brief silence follows until Lazada's father asks for an explanation. He admits he does not fully understand what has happened. Lazada gathers her thoughts, realizing she must clarify everything from the beginning. With animated gestures, she recounts how a dangerous trap caught her, and how Akihiro appeared at the critical moment. She describes being lifted effortlessly and saved from certain harm. Her excitement fills the room, though her father listens with a measured expression. She continues by describing how he defeated the beast swiftly, and then, overwhelmed by emotion, knelt and proposed. To her, the sequence felt destined. Akihiro remains still, aware that the story sounds dramatic when spoken aloud. After hearing the full account, her father finally responds. He explains that the situation is moving too quickly. It is not dislike that troubles him, but concern. Akihiro understands that earning trust will require patience and steady resolve. Lazada's father rubs his chin and admits that proposing marriage simply because someone was rescued sounds premature. Even so, he observes Akihiro closely and concludes that he appears to be a respectable man. The cautious tone in his voice suggests both doubt and reluctant approval. He then speculates about Akihiro's background, suggesting that a person with a surname might come from noble standing. Various possibilities pass through his mind, including family pressure and rejected marriage arrangements. The image of a refined household contrasts sharply with the man sitting before him. Akihiro quickly denies being a noble or of high birth. The assumptions unsettle him, and he realizes how easily misunderstandings can grow in this world. Lizada watches the exchange nervously as her father presses for the truth. Choosing honesty, Akihiro explains that he worked as an accountant for a trading company. He reflects that even if he claimed a more impressive occupation, it would mean little here. The gap between their worlds feels wider than ever. Finally, he reveals how he was suddenly enveloped in light on his way to work and transported to the forest. The family listens in silence, weighing his strange story against the man standing before them. The weave appears impossibly fine to her, far beyond anything produced in the village. She admits she has never seen cloth so delicate. Akihiro confesses that he does not even understand how dyeing works in this world, making the difference between them even clearer. Her mother becomes curious as well, explaining that she works as a weaver. She examines the material closely, half teasing and half impressed. The attention makes Akihiro feel like an exhibit, though the mood remains light. Lizada's father observes quietly, noting that such clothing must come from a prestigious merchant. Akihiro senses that his foreign appearance and unfamiliar background continue to draw suspicion. Even so, no one openly rejects him. With a measured tone, her father suggests setting aside talk of marriage for now. Instead, he proposes something more immediate. Akihiro respectfully asks if he may stay the night, accepting that trust must be earned step by step. After a brief pause, permission is granted. The house is humble, but he is welcome as long as needed. Lizada is told to show him to her brother's vacant room, marking the first night of his uncertain place within her family. In the quiet guest room, Lizada tells Akihiro she will bring warm water so he can clean himself after the long day. He sits on the bed, exhausted but relieved to finally rest indoors. She shyly explains that the house is simple and cannot offer luxury. Akihiro thanks her sincerely, and she leaves to prepare dinner. Alone, he checks his hands and body, noticing the marks from earlier are gone. The strange events of the day feel distant, under the night sky. Both reflect silently. Akihiro realizes this new life may truly begin here. Outside a small stone house, a young woman prepares food in a large pot, while the quiet village stretches behind her. Trees and simple homes surround the area, creating a calm atmosphere. Nearby, a man who recently arrived in this unfamiliar world observes the scene carefully. During breakfast, the man quietly reflects on his situation. Remaining in the village requires responsibility, and he knows he must earn money to survive. Dependence on others cannot continue forever. Determination begins to replace his earlier uncertainty. Later that day, the woman introduces him to a man named Lisasha. The older man listens carefully before offering advice. According to him, newcomers searching for work usually begin by registering at the Adventurers Guild. Before he leaves, the woman offers encouragement. Training in hunting under her father's guidance still keeps her busy, yet she wishes him success on his path. Her supportive attitude strengthens his resolve. Lisasha then explains where the Adventurers Guild can be found. A large building stands in the center of the village, making it easy to locate. With clear directions and a simple plan ahead, the man prepares to visit the guild and begin building a life in this new world. Their kindness has made his stay easier, even though he still feels like an outsider in this unfamiliar place. The woman reminds him not to push himself too hard, showing concern for his well-being. A light joke appears between them, and the moment briefly becomes awkward for the man. Before he heads out, the woman stops him and gives him another piece of clothing. The vest originally belonged to her brother, yet it fits the man surprisingly well. He examines the clothes carefully, feeling grateful once again for the help he has received. Walking away from the house, the man reflects on his situation. Although the villagers have treated him kindly, he knows he cannot continue relying on their generosity. Being completely broke makes the situation even more difficult. Soon, a large building appears ahead. Beside it hangs a sign with a shield and crossed swords, marking the Adventurers Guild branch of the village. The structure stands prominently in the center area, making it clear that it is an important place. Standing inside the building, the man suddenly hears a voice in his mind. A mysterious ability activates, helping him understand the language used in this world. Realizing that he can finally comprehend the words around him inside the Adventurers Guild building, the man approaches the reception counter. Behind the desk stands a young receptionist who greets him politely. The interior of the guild looks organized, with shelves and desks arranged neatly around the hall. After noticing his presence, the receptionist asks if he came to register as an adventurer. Adventurers are assigned ranks that determine the type of jobs they can accept and the rewards they receive. The ranking system ranges from rank 10, at the lowest level, to rank 1 at the highest. Further details about the guild's rules are explained to him. Usually, adventurers are allowed to take only one job at a time, though a few exceptions exist. Completing missions and building credibility gradually raises an adventurer's rank. After explaining the regulations, the receptionist proceeds with the registration process. She gives the man a small needle and asks him to prick his finger, so a drop of blood can be used for identification. The man places his blood onto a special card. As the drop touches the surface, the card reacts and begins absorbing it, forming mysterious patterns. Watching the strange reaction, he quietly wonders how the system actually works. Guild card will serve as his official identification inside the Adventurers Guild. She explains that the card is directly linked to his soul. Because of that connection, the guild can identify the owner at any time. In extreme situations, even if a person dies, information connected to the soul will still be transmitted to the guild through the card system. With the registration complete, the man looks at the card in his hand. The receptionist explains that the same card will also activate the guild's request handling system. Although the idea of a system connected to his soul feels strange, he accepts the explanation calmly. Thinking about his financial situation, he immediately asks if there is any job he could take. As a newcomer, he has no experience with the guild's requests and hopes for a recommendation that suits beginners. Soon afterward, he travels outside the village to complete the suggested task, walking through tall grass and plants. He searches carefully through the field until he spots a plant growing among the weeds. The request requires 5 stalks of the herb, which the Alchemist Guild urgently needs. Holding the plant in his hand, he realizes this simple gathering job is the first step of his new life as an adventurer. Before sending him to the field, the receptionist explains more about the request. The task itself has a low threat level, but she warns that proper preparation is still necessary. The nearby forest contains monster nests, so danger may still appear while gathering herbs. While walking through the grassy area, the man remembers the warning. The monsters that may appear are goblins and horned rabbits. In games they might look weak, but in reality they could still be dangerous. Because of that, he carries a simple weapon he borrowed earlier. Standing among wide patches of grass, he begins his task seriously. His goal is to gather a large number of weas grass stalks. Thanks to his recognition skill, the plants quickly stand out from the surrounding weeds. While collecting the herbs, his thoughts drift back to his previous life. Only 2 days earlier, he had been sitting at an office desk, working on a computer. The sudden change in environment still feels unreal. Memories of his past continue to surface. His marriage had fallen apart after years of focusing too much on work. Following the divorce, loneliness pushed him deeper into his job. While gathering herbs in the field, the man's thoughts drift again. Memories of a woman from his past briefly surface in his mind. Accepting her feelings had surprised him at the time. Even though the situation later became complicated, shaking off the lingering memories, he concentrates on the task. One by one, the stalks of weas grass pile up beside him. His effort continues steadily until he finally gathers the required amount. Bending and moving through the grass for such a long time has taken a toll on his body. Sitting down to rest, he feels soreness spreading across his back. Just as he begins to move again, something unusual catches his attention. A faint sound rustles through the tall grass nearby. Instinctively, he stops and looks around the area, sensing the presence of an animal or something else. Soon, the figure of a small creature appears among the grass. Its shape and rough appearance make it clear that it is not an ordinary animal. Realization strikes him immediately. The creature is a goblin, one of the monsters that the receptionist warned him about earlier. Hidden within the tall grass, the man carefully watches the goblin moving through the field. The creature has not noticed him yet. Remaining still, he studies the distance between them and considers his next move. Attacking first would give him the advantage, especially before the goblin becomes aware of his presence. With a sudden burst of movement, he rushes forward and swings his weapon. The first strike lands heavily, surprising the goblin and knocking it off balance. Adrenaline pushes him to continue without hesitation. After the final strike, the goblin collapses in the grass. A strange sensation follows the battle as information suddenly appears in his mind. Some of the goblin's abilities and knowledge transfer to him, leaving him momentarily confused by the unexpected effect. Remembering the guild's instructions, he prepares proof of the subjugation. For goblins, the required evidence is the nose. Although the task feels unpleasant, he understands it is necessary to complete the request. Later, he returns to the Adventurers Guild, carrying the herbs and proof of the goblin defeat. An employee receives the items and asks him to wait while they are appraised. Inside the quiet hall of the guild, he stands patiently, reflecting on the long and exhausting first day of work. After waiting for the appraisal, the guild staff returns with the results. the man receives payment for both the goblin subjugation and the bundles of weas grass he collected. The reward totals 18,000 war. Hearing the amount and confirming the result brings relief after the long day of work. The herbs he gathered are quickly handed over to another worker. The staff member explains that the plants will be used to produce healing salves. Supplies had been running low, so the delivery is very helpful. Grateful for the materials, the worker thanks him sincerely. After leaving the guild building, he stretches his arms while standing in the quiet street. A strong sense of accomplishment fills him. Completing the job, earning money, and being thanked directly for his work create a feeling he has not experienced in a long time. As he returns toward the house where he has been staying, the young woman notices him and greets him warmly. She looks happy to see that he has come back safely from his first request. Inside the house, the older man mentions that dinner is already being prepared. The woman is cooking using the catch from earlier in the day. Hearing this, the man realizes he has returned to a place that is beginning to feel like home. During dinner, the older man asks about the day's work at the guild. The man explains that he gathered 20 bundles of weas grass and defeated one goblin, earning a total reward of 18,000 war. Hearing the amount surprises the older man. The man modestly explains that his success was mostly due to the recognition skill that helped him identify the herbs easily. According to the older man, most people can only gather 2 or 3 bundles in a day. Since his brother will not return for another month, the man can stay in the empty room for the time being. The reason is simple: the brother has been helping another injured hunter in a nearby village. Soon the meal is served. The man tastes the food and immediately enjoys it. The meatballs are soft and flavorful, and the seasoning feels balanced. After spending the entire day working in the field, the warm meal feels especially satisfying. Compliments about the cooking make the young woman happy. Her family notices the cheerful atmosphere at the table. The simple dinner becomes a pleasant moment shared together, ending the man's first day as an adventurer with warmth and comfort. During dinner, the man listens as the family talks about strange footprints found in the forest. The warm atmosphere around the table makes him feel comfortable. Although his future in this world remains uncertain, the simple kindness of the family brings him quiet reassurance. Later that night, the village becomes quiet under the dark sky. Standing outside the house, the man thinks about the next day. Determination slowly grows inside him as he decides to work harder and continue moving forward as an adventurer. Akihiro stood alone near the edge of the forest beside a small stone house. He held a wooden practice sword and swung it forward with effort. Each movement was heavy and slow. His body struggled to keep up with the simple training routine. After several swings, Akihiro's stamina quickly disappeared. His arms trembled, and he dropped to one knee while leaning on the wooden sword for support. His breathing grew rough as he tried to recover. Although he once practiced kendo years ago, his body no longer had the endurance it once possessed. Astor approached and observed Akihiro's condition. He explained that training was important, but warned that fighting an enemy without enough stamina could be dangerous. He also suggested another way to stay safe. Astor recommended visiting a place where people prayed for protection. Lysatia joined them and explained that the villagers prayed at the church. The idea caught Akihiro's attention. Since such a place truly existed in this world, he decided it might be worth visiting. Later, Akihiro arrived in front of the large stone church of the village. Looking up at the tall building, he realized this was the place where people prayed for protection. With a thoughtful expression, he prepared to enter. He pushed the wooden door open and stepped inside the quiet church. A nun greeted him with a gentle smile and welcomed him warmly. The peaceful atmosphere of the building immediately made the place feel calm and safe. Wanting to behave properly, Akihiro admitted that this was his first time visiting a church in this world. He requested guidance so he would not make a mistake during the prayer. The nun agreed without hesitation and patiently prepared to show him the correct way to worship, appeared nearby, and cheerfully explained that the church also served as a place where children studied reading and arithmetic. The information surprised Akihiro slightly, since the church seemed to function as more than just a religious building. Following the nun's instructions, Akihiro walked down the aisle toward the altar. The tall stone walls and rows of benches surrounded him with a solemn atmosphere. After reaching the front, he knelt as he had been told. Carefully recalling the instructions, Akihiro raised both hands and closed his eyes. The posture felt unusual, but he followed the steps seriously. In the stillness of the church, he focused on his thoughts and began his first prayer in this unfamiliar world. While kneeling quietly in the church, Akihiro suddenly felt a strange sensation inside his head. Bright messages appeared in his vision as if an unseen system had activated. The words reported a critical error and the connection of an unknown system. A strange voice echoed through the vast hall, repeating the word "interesting." The sound carried a playful tone that did not match the calm atmosphere of the church. Laughter followed, spreading across the space as if someone unseen was observing Akihiro closely. Moments later, a mysterious figure appeared before him. The person wore an elegant suit and a tall hat, floating lightly in the air with a relaxed posture. The figure introduced himself as Shell and welcomed Akihiro to the world. His presence felt both strange and overwhelming. Shell calmly explained that beings like him govern the pleasures of this world. According to him, the living creatures of the world called them gods. Hearing this statement left Akihiro stunned as he tried to process the idea. Still unsure of the situation, Akihiro struggled to react. Despite the shock, he gathered himself and asked the mysterious figure to explain things clearly before continuing the conversation. The mysterious figure listened calmly as Akihiro hurriedly introduced himself as Akihiro Maikawa. The elegant man floating before him accepted the name with ease and decided to simply call him Akihiro. His relaxed attitude made the strange encounter feel even more surreal. Shell then explained the meaning behind the word visitor. According to him, Akihiro was considered a guest who had come from outside this world. He described how countless worlds existed independently across the universe, each governed by its own god. As the explanation continued, the amount of information became overwhelming. Akihiro struggled to follow every detail and felt his thoughts slowly drifting. Even though he tried to remain focused, the complicated explanation made it difficult for him to keep track of everything. Noticing Akihiro's confusion, Shell paused and reached his hand toward him. He explained that before continuing, they needed to understand each other better. To make the process easier, Shell decided to temporarily borrow a portion of Akihiro's knowledge. Using an example Akihiro could understand, Shell compared the universe to a large network of servers. Each world functioned like its own independent server, while the people living there acted as terminals connected to it. He described how Akihiro had crossed from a closed network and somehow connected to the network managed by the gods. Around him appeared a simple illustration of different worlds linked together like systems in a network. From Shell's perspective, the situation was extremely interesting. Thinking carefully about the explanation, Akihiro considered the idea like a technical problem. If a connection between worlds truly existed, there should normally be some kind of record or system log that tracked the event. Akihiro then wondered whether someone with enough authority might have intentionally created the connection. The possibility made him question who could possess such power and what their purpose might be. Hearing this information, Akihiro began thinking about a higher level of control beyond the gods themselves. If each world had a structure designed for diversity, someone must have created and managed that structure. The idea slowly formed in his mind. Shell reacted with excitement when Akihiro reached that conclusion. He confirmed that such a being existed and called it the administrator, a concept even higher than the gods. Faced with that answer, Akihiro immediately questioned why that administrator had connected him to this world. However, no response had been received yet. Because of that, the reason behind Akihiro's sudden arrival in this world remained unknown. Shell admitted that some parts of the situation were still beyond what the gods currently understood. The discussion then shifted to the strange abilities Akihiro possessed. Shell pointed out that several of these skills did not normally exist among the inhabitants of this world. One ability worked like a recognition function that helped him read and understand information. Akihiro wondered whether such unusual abilities were truly allowed to exist for someone like him. Shell calmly answered that he was already aware of the situation. Although the administrator's intentions were still unknown, the gods had decided to welcome Akihiro as a new arrival in this world. She then explained that if Akihiro wished to return to his original world, the gods would try to negotiate with the administrator once contact became possible. For the time being, however, Akihiro would remain here as a resident. After offering his blessing for good fortune, Shell gently touched Akihiro's head before disappearing. The strange presence vanished from the church, leaving Akihiro alone again. Soon after, the mysterious system messages returned, confirming that the error had been resolved and the connection had been restored. He stepped outside the church and sat quietly near the wall. His mind struggled to process everything that had just happened. System messages appeared again in his vision, announcing that certain conditions had been fulfilled. New skills were integrated, including prayer and several forms of control related to magical attributes. Curiosity soon pushed him to test one of the new abilities. Akihiro carefully attempted to use the prayer skill. To his surprise, a voice immediately responded to his call. Shock spread across his face when he realized the connection had actually worked. The god who answered introduced himself casually as the one who governed abundance. His relaxed attitude made the moment feel strangely ordinary. After briefly speaking, the god told Akihiro to call again if anything important happened, and then ended the connection. Once the surprise faded, Akihiro focused on understanding the other abilities he had received. One skill allowed him to convert magical particles in the air into magical power and transform that energy into usable formulas. Another ability involved attribute control. For now, Akihiro could only use wind-based magic. However, he learned that studying and training might allow him to control other elements in the future. After thinking carefully, Akihiro accepted that returning home would not happen soon. Learning magic became his new goal. Before pursuing magic, Akihiro realized his weak body would be a problem. Muscle soreness reminded him of his poor condition. He chose to start by rebuilding his stamina through simple physical training. During breakfast at the house, the man listens as the others speak about magic. He shows interest and asks if there is a place where he can learn. The women at the table mention a mage who handles magical tools at the general store. He considers the idea seriously, realizing that learning magic may help him survive better in this world. One of the women explains that the store has a back room filled with magical tools, and that the owner is also a mage. She believes the owner might be willing to teach him. The man agrees and prepares to check the shop outside. The street is quiet under the daylight. As he plans to leave, Lisasha insists on going with him. Another companion is told to focus on hunting practice instead. With that settled, he heads toward the shop with Lisasha accompanying him. Inside the store, he approaches the counter and states his purpose. The shopkeeper listens carefully after hearing that he wants to study magic, and that he was told a mage works there. The shopkeeper directs him to a room in the back. There, a man sits surrounded by books. The meeting marks the beginning of his formal step into learning magic. After hearing that he wishes to study magic, the mage immediately senses something unusual. He observes that the newcomer has already awakened spell formula control, a rare foundation for casting. Curious about where such knowledge was gained, he studies the young man carefully. Hearing this, the mage becomes more interested. He concludes that the power may have been granted by a higher force connected to spell formulas. Since the foundation already exists, he decides that proper training and repeated use will be enough to help the student master it. Inside the study filled with books and tools, they introduce themselves. The mage gives his name as Bastia, and the young man answers with his own. When asked about his magical attribute, he pauses to think and identifies it as wind. Bastia admits that wind is not his main specialty yet. He agrees to demonstrate the basics. Standing before a practice wall, he prepares a sample spell and tells the student to observe closely. With precise control, Bastia defines the spell's structure. He shapes a small sphere of compressed wind and fixes its position above his right hand, setting its force and speed. The controlled pressure forms cleanly, showing the level of accuracy required to handle magic properly. A small sphere of wind begins to spin above Bastia's palm. The air twists tightly into a visible vortex, rotating like a compact ball. Akihiro watches with surprise as the current remains stable without scattering. At Bastia's signal, the sphere launches forward. It strikes the center of the practice target with force, producing a sharp impact. The board trembles from the hit. Akihiro reacts with open admiration, recognizing the strength contained in such a small form. After the demonstration, Bastia outlines the foundation of spell formulas. First, the caster decides the attribute to use. Next, the method of applying that attribute must be determined. Then, the exact shape of the manifestation is imagined. Finally, the location of appearance is fixed clearly in the mind. Consistency between these mental images is essential. The moment the command is given, the spell activates if no contradictions exist. Movement must also be defined with clarity, such as directing it straight forward. Bastia concludes that spoken words are only tools to reinforce concentration. If the image in the mind is perfect and stable, chanting becomes unnecessary. Akihiro listens carefully, beginning to understand that magic depends on structured thought rather than emotion. A target board stands at the far end of the room. The young man faces it with focus, accepting the challenge without hesitation. His posture straightens as he prepares to attempt wind magic for the first time. The instructor watches quietly from behind, waiting to see if he can control the spell properly. He begins forming a clear image in his mind. He defines the shape of the projectile as a small cone and fixes its position just ahead of his right index finger. He carefully adjusts the pressure and stabilizes the imagined structure, concentrating on precision rather than power. With his arm extended, he finalizes the spell parameters. He sets the speed and confirms the direction toward the center of the target. Once the structure feels stable, he releases the magic in a single motion. Projectile shoots forward instantly and strikes the center of the board. The impact is sharp and forceful, sending cracks through the target. The instructor reacts with surprise at the unexpected accuracy and strength. The young man suddenly feels dizzy and nauseated from the strain. As he struggles to steady himself, the instructor rushes toward him. Despite his condition, it is clear that his first attempt at wind magic has exceeded expectations. His head spins as lingering mana pressure fades. The instructor explains that he compressed the wind too tightly, forcing excess energy back into his mind. Such backlash is common for those unaccustomed to handling refined control. Sweat runs down his face as he steadies his breathing. He realizes he cannot repeat a shot of that level yet. Across from him, the instructor acknowledges the power of the attempt, noting that few beginners could produce such force on their first try. A serious warning follows. Had that projectile struck a person instead of a target, the compressed wind might have ruptured the body from within. Control, not strength, becomes the central lesson as the young man listens carefully. Curiosity replaces exhaustion. He asks about more complex spell structures, especially multi-layered formulas. The instructor responds that such techniques remain beyond his current ability, but promises a demonstration of a basic earth spell. Mana gathers above the instructor's palm in a precise circular formation. Particles condense into a small stone sphere with defined mass and size. The object hovers briefly before launching forward at controlled speed, then disperses cleanly back into mana, leaving the student watching in focused admiration. The instructor raises his hand and activates the spell. Several compact projectiles form in the air, then launch in rapid succession. Each one strikes the target with precision, scattering impacts across the board. The demonstration shows controlled distribution rather than raw force. He explains that advanced formulas allow separate manipulation of each unit. In real combat, curved trajectories could strike opponents from blind angles. The student listens closely, realizing that flexibility and structure matters more than simple speed. Managing multiple projectiles with independent behavior feels far beyond his current limits. The instructor calmly notes that multi-target attacks require greater particle usage and sharper focus. Advice follows without hesitation. For now, the student should concentrate on basic formulas and strengthen his control step by step. Testing personal limits and refining stability will prepare him for more complex applications later. As the lesson ends, they speak about practical matters. The young man reveals he is only a low-ranked adventurer, working modest jobs to survive. Hearing this, the instructor decides not to demand payment. Instead, he encourages him to return after gaining experience. The student leaves with renewed determination, aware that growth will depend on steady effort rather than reckless ambition. After leaving the lesson, the young adventurer thinks about his next step. Practice must wait because he lacks money. To cover expenses, he decides to gather wild grass and sell it. Working alone, he collects a large bundle, noticing that his movements have become more efficient than before. The town feels busier than usual as he carries the harvest to a shop inside. He hands over the grass and receives payment. The shopkeeper thanks him politely, and he steps back onto the street with a small but necessary income. While walking away, a group of armed individuals catches his attention. Their equipment and posture suggest experience. Unease settles in as he wonders if their eyes are on him. Not wanting trouble, he quietly leaves the area, reminding himself that newcomers often attract notice. Later, he offers his earnings to cover the day's rent. A young woman tries to refuse the payment, insisting he has already done enough. Her reaction surprises him, leaving him unsure how to respond. Upon returning home, he is greeted warmly. The household welcomes him back, relieved to see him safe. Gratitude fills the room, yet he remains determined to stand on his own. Even in a new world, responsibility and steady effort remain his guiding principles. Morning arrives with unsettled weather, yet Akihiro prepares to train outside. He informs the household of his plan before stepping out. After he leaves, the young woman worries about the rent money he insisted on paying. Unsure whether accepting it was right, she turns to her father for guidance. Her father considers the situation carefully. Supporting someone diligent feels natural to him, but he recognizes that pride matters. Since Akihiro chose to contribute, refusing outright might wound his determination. The girl reflects on how difficult life is for a newcomer without farmland or stable work. Outside the town, wind cuts sharply across the open field. Grass bends under the force as he swings his arm, practicing controlled movements. Each motion is deliberate, focusing on refining technique rather than increasing strength. From a short distance away, the young woman watches him. She learns that excessive spell control can cause backlash, which explains his earlier exhaustion. Realization deepens her concern, yet she admires his willingness to continue training despite the risks. He notices her expression and reassures her with steady confidence. Although he admits some worry about overexertion, he promises to avoid pushing himself too far. Gradually, her tension eases. Determination drives him forward, but caution now tempers his resolve. Akihiro considers how to apply wind magic in real combat. Rather than aiming for lethal force, he decides it would be better to target limbs and restrain movement. With that in mind, he sets up a wooden log as practice material, believing it will serve as a suitable stand-in. Carefully, he fixes the spell's position ahead of his finger and adjusts the pressure and size of the wind construct. He releases it at controlled speed. The projectile strikes the log, carving into the surface. Soon after, rain begins to fall, forcing him to stop. Fatigue spreads through his body as the strain of repeated casting catches up to him. Back inside, he collapses onto his bedding, muscles aching from both training and tension. The young woman enters quietly, carrying a basin and cloth prepared to ease muscle pain. She offers assistance without hesitation, though embarrassed by his condition. He accepts the help with sincere appreciation. Cool relief spreads across his back as she tends to him carefully. Her concern is genuine, encouraged by her father's support for his efforts. Overwhelmed by gratitude, Akihiro reflects on how fortunate he is to have found kindness in an unfamiliar world. The young woman praises Akihiro for his steady effort and kind nature, stirring emotions he has not felt in years. Determined to repay the family's generosity, he quietly renews his resolve to become stronger and more reliable. Embarrassment spreads across his face as she continues tending to him. Compliments feel unfamiliar, almost overwhelming. Even so, gratitude outweighs the awkwardness. The warmth of the moment leaves his chest tight, reminding him of a youth he once thought long gone. Rain taps softly against the window later that day. Rest restored his strength, and by morning he heads out again to gather more wissis grass. While working, he considers how spell control might function in real combat situations. A thought emerges about exploring deeper forest areas for better training opportunities. Within the forest, movement ahead draws his attention. Two small goblin-like creatures sit on the ground, distracted while eating. He studies them carefully from behind the trees, noting their position and the direction of the light. Calm focus replaces hesitation. He selects the rear target to avoid direct confrontation. Wind mana gathers at his fingertip as he defines pressure, shape, and speed. With everything aligned, he releases the spell toward the unsuspecting enemy. Hidden among the trees, Akihiro releases his wind spell toward the goblin at the rear. The compressed projectile tears into its body, causing sudden panic. As the creature collapses, a notification appears in his vision, indicating that a skill related to awareness has been transferred to him. Without hesitation, Akihiro adjusts his stance and targets its leg. A precise shot pierces the knee, crippling its movement. He closes the distance immediately and finishes the fight with a firm strike, ending the struggle quickly. Breathing steadily, he checks for another notification but finds none. This time, no additional skill is acquired due to incompatibility. Even so, relief washes over him when he realizes there is no mana backlash from the repeated casting. Looking at the fallen creature, he notes the requested body part as proof of subjugation. Though he could have ended it with a direct headshot, restraint proved more useful for practical gain. His hands remain steady, suggesting gradual adaptation to spell control. Later, he sells both the gathered grass and the goblin materials. The payment is substantial compared to previous days. As he leaves the shop, he considers buying new shoes, quietly satisfied that his effort is beginning to yield tangible results. In town, a broad-shouldered adventurer approaches Akihiro with a grin. Rumors have spread about a newcomer who consistently gathers Wia's grass. Unsure of the man's intentions, Akihiro braces himself, expecting confrontation. The stranger studies him closely, clearly amused by his anxious reaction. Instead of hostility, laughter erupts. Supplies are running low, and prices continue to climb due to frequent injuries among adventurers. Reliable access to medicinal herbs has become vital. Those who collect Wia's grass are quietly supporting the guild's survival. The large man claps Akihiro on the shoulder with friendly force. He praises his efforts and coins a nickname that reflects his contribution. Though slightly overwhelmed by the energy, Akihiro realizes he is being appreciated rather than threatened. For once, his steady work earns open recognition. Relief settles in as the adventurer departs. Akihiro hopes for a calm life without unnecessary conflict. Just as that thought crosses his mind, a sharp voice calls out from nearby, cutting through the brief peace. A young girl steps forward and points at him with intensity. Her eyes are sharp with suspicion as she accuses him of being a mage. Confusion replaces calm. Akihiro can only stare back, uncertain why this stranger has singled him out. She studies Akihiro carefully, observing the steady flow of mana around him. Its clarity and balance convince her that he is not ordinary. Based on that impression, she concludes he must be a spellcaster, and waits for his reaction. Akihiro faced two young women who were studying him with curiosity. One of them focused on the flow of mana inside his body, and noticed how refined and steady it appeared. That observation led her to believe he was a mage. With a calm expression, he rejected their assumption and clarified that he was not a mage. A small gesture of his hand signaled refusal. Choosing not to prolong the exchange, he turned his back and began to leave. Doubt crossed his mind while he continued forward, being only 10th rank. Akihiro felt he lacked the strength to assist them in any meaningful way. Behind him, the energetic girl firmly insisted that her status as a 7th rank adventurer proved she was serious, and that he should at least listen. Stepping in to ease the tension, the quieter girl apologized for her companion's behavior. Sincerity showed in her posture as she respectfully asked for a brief moment of his time. Embarrassment finally replaced pride. After receiving a reminder about proper manners, the energetic girl admitted her fault and offered a direct apology to Akihiro for her earlier outburst. Both girls looked at Akihiro with pleading expressions, asking for a chance to explain. Seeing their persistence, he let out a quiet sigh and admitted that he had already given in. He agreed to listen, though only for a short time. Relief immediately appeared on their faces as they thanked him. Soon after, they brought him to an inn and introduced him to a tall swordsman named Deed. The man greeted Akihiro politely and thanked him for coming. They explained that their companions were waiting upstairs, and the discussion would continue there. Inside the room, Akihiro introduced himself and reminded them that he was only 10th rank. Confusion showed on his face as he asked what the matter was about. The explanation finally came: a massive slime had appeared deep within the northern forest. Deed described the threat in detail. Once the slime grew large enough, normal weapons would no longer work. Ares' blade and Wadis's magic could handle a regular one, but this monster had grown abnormally huge, capable of swallowing a person whole. Because the request came directly from the guild, refusal was difficult. At present, their party consisted only of 7th rank adventurers or higher, leaving them uncertain how to handle such an unusual enemy alone. Deed explained the details of the request. The completion reward was 200,000 wall, and Akihiro would receive 70%. Expenses and the completion count would be covered under a designated request, and special arrangements would also be made to support his rank advancement. After a brief silence, he asked when they planned to depart. The answer came quickly: tomorrow morning. Because the mission was officially designated by the guild, an auditor would accompany them, making 5 members in total. While considering the reward, Akihiro learned the northern forest was close enough for a day trip. However, Deed warned that if ignored, the giant slime could split apart and multiply, eventually destroying the local ecosystem. The urgency of the situation became clear. Encouragement followed immediately. Deed assured him of protection, and the girls expressed their relief. Although Akihiro admitted he was still a beginner, he resolved to participate and give his full effort. Later, standing outside beneath the open sky, uncertainty lingered in his thoughts as he quietly questioned how much help he could truly provide. Akihiro returned home and was greeted by an older man who noticed his tired appearance. The man asked about the day's hunt, observing that the forest had been quiet and lacking game. Heavy rain had worsened the road conditions, making the trip more exhausting than usual. Attention shifted to Akihiro's blade, which carried faint traces of blood. He explained that the marks were likely from sharpening it earlier. When asked whether he wanted help with butchering, he calmly declined and insisted he was fine. During the meal, the conversation turned to the request he had accepted. The mention of a massive slime caught immediate attention. The scale of the creature surprised those listening, and concern began to surface. The older man reflected seriously on the matter. Although slimes were not typically aggressive, encountering one deep in the forest could be dangerous. Even with guild backing, a mission classified at 7th rank remained a serious risk. Awkward humor briefly lightened the mood as Akihiro recalled his unpleasant first encounter with slimes. Their shapeless bodies left a strong impression on him. Despite the jokes, the reality of facing an enormous version of such a creature weighed heavily on his mind. Akihiro tried to reassure the others that he would manage. With several 7th rank adventurers in the party, he believed support would be sufficient. Even so, they reminded him that he was still only 10th rank, and urged him not to push himself beyond his limits. Later that night, doubt crept in. Although he had spoken confidently, unease settled over him once he lay down to rest. The older man's quiet warning to stay cautious echoed in his thoughts as the village fell silent. Sleep did not come easily, his mind fixated on the unknown nature of the giant slime and the danger waiting deep in the forest. The thought of entering a hazardous zone tightened his chest, and anxiety replaced his earlier composure. Memories of past battles surfaced. He had defeated goblins and other armed creatures, yet each fight carried the possibility that he could have been the one who died. In his previous world, death had never felt so close or so real. Fear finally surfaced without restraint. Meeting a god had not granted him invincibility, and the power he possessed was far from overwhelming. Even casting a single spell strained his body. Facing the coming mission, Akihiro could no longer deny how frightened he truly was. Lying in the dark, Akihiro's thoughts drifted back to his former life. He remembered ordinary days filled with work, complaints, games, and quiet evenings, with friends and family. That world had been predictable and safe. Danger had never been part of his routine. Fear tightened inside his chest. He covered his eyes with his arm, unable to suppress the anxiety building within him. The possibility of dying in this unfamiliar world felt real and unavoidable. No matter how much he tried to steady himself, the dread refused to fade. While he struggled with those thoughts, a gentle touch reached his hand. Someone called his name softly, pulling him away from the spiral of fear. His eyes opened slowly, moisture gathering at the corners. Lizatia leaned over him, her expression filled with concern. She had noticed his distress and come to check on him. Seeing her face brought him back to the present. Akihiro apologized quietly, admitting he had been lost in thought and failed to respond when she called. Lizatia explained that she had worried about his condition. In the stillness of the room, her presence eased some of the tension that had gripped him moments earlier. He realized Lizatia was still holding his hand and quickly pulled back in embarrassment. She noticed the movement and calmly assured him that everything was fine. The brief contact made him aware of how tense he had been moments earlier. She explained that she had been worried since he returned. His expression that morning had seemed strained, and when she saw him lost in thought, she reacted without thinking. Entering his room had not been planned, and she admitted she acted out of concern. Gratitude replaced his unease. Akihiro thanked her sincerely, admitting that he had been overthinking the mission and letting fear overwhelm him. Speaking with her helped clear his mind. He realized that isolating himself would only have deepened his anxiety. With a gentle smile, Lizatia encouraged him to do his best on the mission. Although she confessed that she was honestly worried about tomorrow, she promised to prepare a warm meal and wait for his return. After she left, Akihiro reflected quietly. Knowing that someone was waiting for him gave him unexpected strength. The small house, once just a place to sleep, now felt like somewhere he truly belonged and could safely return to. A sense of relief settled over Akihiro as he reflected on Lizatia's words. Simply knowing someone would be waiting for him eased the fear that had weighed on him the night before. With a lighter expression, he joked about looking forward to the next day's meal, allowing laughter to replace his earlier tension. Morning preparations began with practical advice. The older man reminded him that wolves were often more troublesome than expected, especially when they moved in packs. However, with several high-ranking members in the party, the risk should remain manageable as long as they avoided wandering too deep into the forest. Standing at the doorway, Akihiro announced his departure. He received firm guidance to stay alert and return safely. The warning carried experience rather than fear, reinforcing the importance of caution. Lizatia stepped forward, visibly anxious, and urged him to be careful. She handed him a small lunch she had prepared. When he casually shortened her name, surprise filled her face, marking a subtle shift in their closeness. Embarrassment turned into shared laughter. Akihiro suggested she call him Hiro instead, explaining that friends used that name. The simple exchange created warmth between them before he finally set off toward the forest, her face turning red as emotions overwhelmed her. Akihiro noticed her flustered state and gently told her not to force herself. The sight eased his tension, and her honest reaction made the moment feel lighter, gathering her courage. She finally called out to him with determination, wishing him a safe trip. Hearing his shortened name from her lips left a quiet impression on him. As he stepped away from the house, he realized that the anxiety that had troubled him earlier had faded considerably. While walking toward the meeting point, he acknowledged that fear still lingered deep inside. Even so, a new sense of resolve pushed him forward. He clenched his fist and decided to face the enormous slime directly. For the time being, he had chosen to live in this world, and that decision gave him strength. On the way, a notification appeared, indicating that a fragment of bravery had been integrated into his skill set. The timing surprised him, but he accepted it without overthinking. At the entrance, the party gathered. Deed confirmed their departure, and a guild representative named Hardis introduced himself as today's auditor. With everyone present, the group prepared to head toward the northern forest. Akihiro entered the northern forest with steady steps, carrying quiet resolve as the dangerous mission finally began. In the early afternoon, 5 travelers make their way through a dense forest. At the front, a tall armored warrior leads while the others follow in close formation. A young woman stays protected near the center as they advance along the narrow trail. Because monster sightings increase after noon, everyone remains cautious. While walking, Akihiro shares his knowledge about slimes. According to him, once a slime grows large, it rarely changes its location. This information leads one companion to consider whether the huge slime they noticed earlier is still nearby. Based on Akihiro's explanation, it is unlikely to have wandered far. Reaching into his belongings, Akihiro pulls out a small device. Though simple in appearance, it contains a compass. After checking the needle, he compares its direction with their map. The young woman briefly assumes it might be magical, yet the tool serves a practical purpose in confirming their route. Observing the device closely, the armored warrior reflects on his usual method of navigation using the sun's position. He finds the compass efficient and straightforward. With their direction verified, the party gains renewed confidence. Suddenly, two goblins burst from the bushes, gripping crude spears. Reacting immediately, the warrior steps forward as the others prepare themselves for the fight. Two goblins suddenly appear from the bushes and charge with crude spears. The armored warrior reacts without hesitation, stepping forward and drawing his blade in one motion. His swing is fast and precise, cutting down the attackers before they can land a strike. Akihiro notes that the enemies fall within the expected rank of difficulty. The young woman confirms that the subjugation process is complete. However, the armored warrior senses a change in the surroundings. A sudden unease spreads through Akihiro as he observes the darkened trees. The forest feels deeper and more oppressive than before. Subtle sounds echo between the trunks, suggesting movement beyond their sight. He realizes that the earlier attack may not have been the only danger waiting. Soon, multiple wolves emerge from the shadows, forming a wide circle around the group. The party gathers tightly together as more shapes step onto the path. Surrounded on all sides, they prepare for another confrontation. The warrior instructs the others to hold the line. The young woman begins to chant calmly. In the next instant, the wolves collapse almost simultaneously. Akihiro stands in shock at the sudden outcome, while the forest finally grows quiet again. After the wolves collapse, the young woman calmly explains her spell. She had compressed fireballs and placed them inside the wolves' mouths, burning their lungs from within. The method is efficient and leaves the bodies mostly intact. Her expression remains gentle, despite the severity of the attack. Standing quietly among the fallen beasts, she appears modest and composed. However, her actions reveal a decisive and ruthless approach in battle. Akihiro watches her with surprise, realizing that her calm demeanor hides strong resolve. The gap between her appearance and her methods leaves a strong impression on him. The armored warrior shifts attention to practical matters. Wolf pelts can be sold, but skinning them requires time and effort. He decides they will collect only what they can carry on the return trip. As they resume walking, one companion estimates that reaching their destination will take roughly 2 more hours. The path ahead seems stable for now. Akihiro listens while keeping pace with the others. Noticing Akihiro's tension, a companion walks beside him with a relaxed smile. The atmosphere lightens slightly as they continue through the forest, leaving the battle site behind. As the group continues along the forest path, Akihiro walks beside Hardis, a guild staff member. Hardis thanks him for agreeing to take part in the mission, despite being a new adventurer. Akihiro responds modestly, unsure whether he can be of much help. Even so, he keeps pace with the others, determined to contribute. During their walk, Akihiro studies Hardis's face. For a brief moment, he realizes how ordinary his features seem, making them difficult to recall clearly. The thought catches him off guard, and he reacts awkwardly when Hardis addresses him directly. Hardis expresses relief, noting that well-balanced groups like this are uncommon. With both frontline fighters and support members, the team functions smoothly. It is also mentioned that 3 of them share a childhood connection from the same village, strengthening their coordination. Akihiro reacts dramatically to the idea of childhood friends. Feeling a sudden wave of envy, his exaggerated response causes a brief distraction as they walk. Without warning, another wolf lunges from the side. Hardis moves instantly, cutting it down with swift and efficient strikes. Akihiro quickly apologizes for his earlier remark, regaining focus. The group prepares to push forward toward their objective. He steels himself as they approach their destination. Having traveled this far, he feels determined to achieve clear results before returning. Sweat forms on his face, yet his resolve does not waver. The mission now carries weight beyond simple exploration. Through the trees, a massive slime comes into view. Its transparent body fills the clearing, towering over the surrounding brush. Akihiro and Hardis stop in place, staring at its size. According to the report, this is the correct location. Even so, the scale of the creature exceeds their expectations. Standing before it, Akihiro estimates the slime to be nearly 3 meters tall. The surface trembles slowly, reflecting light from above. Its sheer mass blocks the path forward, forcing the group to assess the situation carefully. While observing the creature, Akihiro notices a small sphere within its body. That sphere appears to be the core. He recalls that slimes rely on this internal structure to maintain their form. Identifying it becomes the key to ending the threat. Hardis explains the strategy calmly. If they destroy the core or remove enough surrounding material, the slime's activity should cease. With a clear objective in mind, the party prepares to begin the subjugation. To observe the slime's reaction, Akihiro asks the armored warrior to throw a stone. The rock strikes the creature's surface and sinks slightly into its body. For a moment, the slime shifts and trembles. Soon after, its mass slowly slides back into place, returning to its original position. The movement confirms that it responds to impact but maintains its structure. Discussion turns to how they should handle the remains. Destroying the core will end the threat. Yet the outer jelly can still be recovered if handled properly. Akihiro considers whether removing part of the slime first might be possible. A plan begins forming in his mind as he studies the creature carefully. Encouraged by the others, he decides to test it with moderate power. Taking down something of this size carries risk, and he understands the strain it may place on him. Even so, the group places their trust in his judgment. Extending his arm toward the slime, Akihiro prepares himself. His hands tremble slightly under the pressure. The weight of expectation makes him uneasy, yet he refuses to step back. With renewed determination, he strengthens his resolve. Having come this far with everyone supporting him, he commits fully to the attempt and prepares to release his attack. Focusing intensely, Akihiro begins constructing the spell in precise detail. He imagines a sphere of wind 3 meters wide, then compresses it down to a small mass of roughly 10 centimeters. Rotational force is added to increase penetration, and he fixes the point of release just ahead of his right index finger. Pressure, shape, radius, and speed are carefully defined in his mind, with his aim adjusted slightly to the right of the slime's core. Akihiro releases the attack. The compressed wind bullet tears forward at high speed and pierces into the massive body. Upon impact, the slime's surface bursts outward, scattering fragments of jelly across the clearing. Pieces of gelatinous matter fall heavily to the ground. Although the outer layer proves tougher than expected, the internal core remains undamaged. Even so, the slime's movements begin to falter as its structure destabilizes. The armored warrior observes the creature closely and confirms that its activity has stopped. Companions nearby react with surprise and admiration at the successful strike. Relief washes over Akihiro as tension leaves his body. He forces a confident expression and signals that he succeeded. Moments later, exhaustion catches up to him, and the forest finally grows quiet once again. The strain of releasing the compressed wind attack quickly overwhelms Akihiro. A sharp wave of nausea and headache forces him to bend forward. Sweat runs down his face as he struggles to steady his breathing. The young woman supports him from behind, keeping him from collapsing. Gradually regaining focus, Akihiro reflects on the spell's structure. He wonders whether the discomfort came from excessive compression or the extreme speed he assigned to the projectile. Determined to improve, he resolves to test and refine the technique more carefully next time. Meanwhile, the others gather around the remains of the massive slime. The exposed core rests among scattered jelly fragments. Its size alone makes the reward worthwhile. Such a large specimen is rarely encountered, and its materials will bring significant value. Hardis reminds everyone to prioritize safety in future missions. Overexertion carries risk, especially during large-scale subjugations. The advice is received with understanding, and the mood becomes lighter as tension fades. Standing upright again, Akihiro apologizes for causing concern. His companions reassure him, expressing surprise at the extent of his power. With the core secured and the objective achieved, the party prepares to return from the forest. The armored warrior and the others openly praise Akihiro for surpassing his limits and ending the battle in a single strike. Their admiration lifts the tension that had weighed on them moments before. Although exhausted, Akihiro accepts their words with modest gratitude, despite the praise. He admits to himself that he still does not fully understand his own limits. Having only recently learned magic, he remains uncertain about the risks of pushing his power further. Before the conversation can continue, Eri suddenly reacts. Her expression sharpens as she senses something unusual approaching. A heavy sound echoes through the forest canopy. Hardis immediately orders a withdrawal, recognizing the danger in the vibration. The trees tremble slightly, and the air grows tense. Akihiro realizes that whatever is coming is far larger than the wolves they fought earlier. Quick decisions follow. Eri and the armored warrior volunteer to guard the rear while Hardus takes the lead. The young woman prepares to secure the slime's core, in case they must retreat quickly. The group shifts into motion without hesitation. A deep roar rolls across the clearing. The sound is far too heavy to belong to a wolf. As it draws nearer, urgency replaces relief, and the party braces for an even greater threat. Thick grass parts as three figures move through the forest. Shadows shift between the trees, revealing a large pack of wolves surrounding them from a distance. Akihiro quickly senses that these are not normal beasts. Their numbers exceed 10, and their formation shows clear intent to hunt. Without hesitation, they break into a run. The armored man and the girl maintain strong speed, while Akihiro begins to fall behind. Each step grows heavier, and his breathing becomes uneven. Awareness strikes him that his lack of stamina is slowing everyone down. A new idea forms in his mind as panic rises. Outrunning the wolves seems impossible with his physical limits. Climbing a tree could provide height and safety, allowing him to use magic against the pack. Continuing this chase would only guarantee capture. Uncertainty crosses the others' faces. Taking a short rest might preserve their strength. Yet the forest hides an unknown number of enemies. Standing still carries its own danger. The pressure of time weighs heavily on the group. Resolve replaces hesitation. Wolves, like any creature, must have endurance limits. Determined to survive, Akihiro steps forward and prepares to carry out the plan before the pack tightens its circle. Akihiro forces himself up the tree with the others. Sweat runs down his face as he steadies his breathing. Regret crosses his mind as he admits his poor stamina. Below them, branches shake, and the warning comes that the wolves are approaching fast. Dark shapes burst from the undergrowth. Massive wolves charge into view, far larger than anything they expected. Their teeth flash as they snarl. Circling the trees, the ground trembles under their weight as more shadows gather behind them. From their position above, the group sees the full scale of the threat. The beasts are nearly 3 times the size of normal wolves. Akihiro focuses and uses recognition magic to examine them. The result reveals hardened skin and bodies altered by dense magical energy, turning them into monsters far stronger than ordinary animals. Howls rise into the sky. The sound signals others nearby. A normal pack would number around 10, yet nearly 20 creatures now surround the area. The situation grows worse as the calls continue, suggesting reinforcements. Silence falls among the group. Tension tightens their expressions while they wait for a decision. After a brief pause, resolve settles in. A calm order is given to act. The next move will determine whether they survive the encirclement. A wolf suddenly leaps toward the tree, claws extended. In response, the short-haired girl drops from above and strikes downward with force. Her attack lands directly on the beast's head, driving it back to the ground. Concern spreads among the group as they realize the damage is minimal. The burn marks on the wolves are shallow, far from enough to stop them. Doubt rises about whether their current strategy is effective. Without proper suppression, even stronger magic will fail to penetrate deeply. Below the branches, several wolves circle the trunk, staring upward. Fortunately, they show no ability to climb. Relief flickers across Akihiro's face as he notices this limitation. Seeing the opening, he decides to attempt his own method. Carefully, he forms a precise spell. He imagines a compressed sphere of wind condensed into a tiny point. Specific conditions are set: fixed position, defined pressure, controlled size, and extreme speed. The calculation finishes within seconds as energy gathers at his fingertip. A single wolf becomes his target. With the trajectory locked and velocity determined, he releases the spell. At such speed, evasion is impossible. The decisive strike is launched toward the center of the beast. The compressed wind projectile pierces through the wolf's skull and drops it instantly. Akihiro clenches his fist as relief flashes across his face. The spell has worked exactly as calculated. However, that brief success fades when he notices more shadows gathering beyond the trees. Wolves keep emerging from the forest, answering the earlier howls. The girl quickly assesses the situation and understands the danger. If they fail to reduce the pack soon, other groups may join. Continuous single attacks will not solve this. Akihiro studies the advancing beasts and realizes this is no time for hesitation. Taking them down one by one will only exhaust him. A wider attack is necessary. He recalls that striking multiple targets at once requires a multicast spell, something far more demanding than his previous attempt. A warning from his teacher echoes in his mind. Excessive spellcasting can cause serious harm and unpredictable side effects. Doubt grips him for a moment, but the sight of the encroaching wolves leaves little choice. Even knowing the risks, he prepares to push beyond his limits. Focusing deeply, he attempts to connect with a higher source of power. The wolves continue advancing as he seeks guidance, aware that the next spell may decide everything. Overosing magic does not only cause dizziness, it can lead to brain damage, or even cerebral hemorrhage. The explanation is direct and leaves no room for misunderstanding. Serious harm means permanent consequences. Despite the danger, the presence guiding him decides to assist. Control of the spell shifts, easing the burden on Akihiro's mind. However, the support comes with a price. Once this intervention ends, he will likely lose consciousness for several days. The situation is too critical to hesitate, and the connection stabilizes. Looking down, he sees the wolves still gathering. The howling has stopped, suggesting the full pack has arrived. Roughly 30 beasts now surround the tree. Since retreat is impossible, he resolves to attempt multicasting, even knowing the strain it will cause. He informs the others to prepare themselves. After this attack, he may collapse. Determination replaces fear as he commits fully to the plan. The responsibility rests on his shoulders. Focusing intensely, he visualizes a targeting reticle assigned to each wolf, one by one. He marks them in sequence. 34 targets are identified. With every enemy locked in place, the decisive moment approaches. With intense focus, Akihiro completes the final calculations. He defines the wind attribute, pressure, and shape for each projectile. 34 manifestations are fixed at high speed, each assigned to a separate target. Every shot is individually aimed, leaving no room for error. A final thought of returning home strengthens his resolve. Determination fills his expression as he gives the command to release the spell. The technique activates instantly, carrying all his effort and hope in a single moment. One wolf after another is struck through the head by compressed wind bullets. The projectiles hit with perfect accuracy, tearing through their hardened bodies. In seconds, the entire pack collapses, unable to resist the overwhelming force. Silence replaces the chaos. From the tree, his companions stare in disbelief at the scene below. Akihiro remains standing for a brief moment, breathing heavily as exhaustion spreads through his body. The scale of what he accomplished becomes clear to everyone. Below them, none of the wolves move. The threat has completely vanished. Relief softens his face as he realizes they survived. A quiet certainty rises within him that one day, he may truly find a way back home. After the battle, Akihiro's vision darkens. His strength leaves him, and his body begins to fall. In the fading light, a well-dressed young man wearing a tall hat appears, seated calmly in an empty space. As consciousness slips away, Akihiro senses he is no longer in the forest. When awareness returns, he finds himself standing before the same elegant figure. The man introduces himself as Electoa and welcomes him as a visitor. Akihiro expresses gratitude for the earlier assistance, realizing this presence was the one supporting his spellcasting during the crisis. Confused, Akihiro questions where he is. Electoa explains that in his culture, monsters are managed and observed carefully. He suggests that this meeting place exists for guidance and supervision. The calm explanation contrasts with the violent struggle that just ended. The strange host clarifies that this space allows them to speak while Akihiro's physical body rests in a coma-like state. Time flows differently here, giving them the chance for discussion. Akihiro listens, still trying to process everything. Electoa then shifts the topic to Earth. He reveals that Akihiro's world has drawn attention as something remarkable. Hearing this, Akihiro is stunned to learn that his home is being observed from afar. Akihiro's original planet was designed to measure how far civilization could advance. This current world, however, was created to allow living beings to pursue happiness as fully as possible. Although it resembles Earth, it follows a different purpose. Even the species here were modeled after humans. The host continues, describing a version of Earth shaped to reduce conflict. Wars are intentionally minimized to maintain stability. To Akihiro, it sounds almost unreal, like an ideal society built from familiar foundations, yet carefully adjusted to avoid humanity's worst flaws. Their conversation shifts unexpectedly to culture. Electoa expresses fascination with Earth's entertainment and food. He openly admires simple snacks such as fried potatoes, along with comics, animation, and games. Akihiro is surprised that ordinary aspects of his world are observed and enjoyed elsewhere. Before ending the discussion, Electoa asks for assistance in guiding this world when Akihiro returns. There is mention of appointing him to help with certain matters, linking his role more deeply to this realm's development. Time in this space is limited. Electoa informs him that it is nearly time to wake, with a final farewell and a wish for success on his journey. The strange meeting concludes, and Akihiro's consciousness begins returning to his body. Akihiro drifts between sleep and awareness, unsure of his surroundings. Thoughts of Liz cross his fading mind as he wonders where he will awaken. Uncertainty fills him, caught between worlds, waiting to discover which reality will greet him next. Akihiro slowly opened his eyes to a ceiling he did not recognize. The wooden beams and stone walls were unfamiliar. Bright light poured through a nearby window, forcing him to squint. As his vision cleared, he realized he was lying in a simple bed inside a quiet room. Confusion filled his mind. Memories returned in fragments. He recalled the companions he had traveled with and wondered if they were safe. The strange meeting with a godlike figure resurfaced in his thoughts, confirming that everything that happened before was real. Turning his head, Akihiro noticed a young woman asleep beside his bed. Lizatia had collapsed on the floor, still holding onto the mattress. Her expression was calm despite her exhaustion. It became clear that she had stayed close to him the entire time. Alarmed, Akihiro leaned forward, worried she had fainted. However, her steady breathing reassured him. She remained deeply asleep, her body finally giving in to fatigue after days of care. Carefully rising from the bed, Akihiro examined himself. His body felt normal, aside from a few scratches on his arm and leg standing barefoot on the wooden floor. He understood that he had been saved, and that he was not alone in this unfamiliar world. Lizatia suddenly leaned forward and wrapped her arms tightly around Akihiro. Her body trembled as relief overcame her exhaustion. Moments earlier, she had been struggling to wake, but the sight of him sitting up erased the last trace of sleep from her eyes. Overcome by emotion, she clung to him without restraint. Her breathing grew uneven, and panic briefly took control. Akihiro, caught off guard, struggled to respond while steadying her shoulders. Outside the stone house, the night air remained calm, contrasting with the tension inside. Akihiro guided her to take slow breaths until her shaking eased. Little by little, her heartbeat steadied, and her expression softened. Once she regained composure, she explained what had happened. Members of the guild, including Hardis and the others, had carried Akihiro back after he collapsed. The guild's apothecary used excessive mana exhaustion as the diagnosis and assured them he would awaken after sufficient rest. Gratitude replaced confusion. Lizatia admitted how deeply worried she had been, fearing he might never open his eyes again. In that small room, both of them realized how fragile their journey had become, and how much they now meant to one another. Akihiro faced Lizatia and assured her that he had returned safely. Relief shone in her eyes as she accepted his presence without hesitation. The small stone house, once filled with worry, now felt warm and peaceful. He admitted that he had pushed himself too hard, yet his priority had been coming back alive. Soon after, she prepared a simple bowl of soup to ease his recovery. The gentle meal was meant to help his body regain strength after days of unconsciousness. As he ate, she explained that the guild's apothecary had provided liquid nourishment while he slept. Before long, a senior guild member stopped by and firmly reminded him to rest. Despite the advice, Akihiro insisted that he felt well enough to walk around the village. Lizatia watched him closely, still uneasy about his condition. Determined to understand what happened after he collapsed, Akihiro decided to visit the guild later that day. He promised not to overexert himself and reassured Lizatia that he would return quickly. As they stepped outside, concern lingered between them. Though she remained anxious, she respected his resolve. Meanwhile, Akihiro carried both gratitude and responsibility, aware that surviving this world required caution as much as courage. On the way to the guild, Akihiro paused along the road and quietly activated his skill interface. Transparent panels appeared before him, listing his current abilities and their levels. Several improvements caught his attention, including new developments in attribute control. One unfamiliar entry stood out, suggesting that something had changed during the incident when he nearly collapsed. Upon reaching the guild building, he was greeted immediately by a familiar member who thanked him sincerely for his help the other day. The concern on the man's face showed that news of Akihiro's condition had spread. Seeing him upright and steady brought visible relief. As they spoke, Akihiro learned that his quick thinking had prevented further danger. By relying on vigilance at its limit, he had managed to return safely without encountering additional threats. Soon, more companions gathered around him. Their expressions were bright, and their gratitude was genuine. They acknowledged how much his actions had supported the group during a critical moment. While speaking with them, Akihiro expressed appreciation in return. He learned that everyone had taken turns carrying him back to town after he lost consciousness. Realizing the effort involved, he felt a deeper sense of connection to the people who now stood beside him in this unfamiliar world. Inside the guild office, several stacks of coins were placed on the table. A guild representative explained that the money included both the standard achievement fee and additional reward funds. The recent mission had produced unexpected profit, and Akihiro's contribution played a major role in that outcome. Details soon followed. As winter approached, demand for fur increased sharply. The wolf-like creature they defeated was identified as a rare dire wolf, which significantly raised its market value. The total reward reached 1 million wall for the group, divided evenly. Each member would receive 250,000 wall. For Akihiro, the amount was comparable to a local farmer's yearly income. The figure left him momentarily speechless. In addition to the party reward, the guild offered him a separate achievement bonus for his discovery and involvement in subduing the dire wolf. The official acknowledged that such success would normally be impossible at their rank, making the accomplishment even more notable. Finally, the representative revealed that a formal order had come from the Viscount. As a special exception, this mission would count toward completed achievements. The noble viewed their actions as beneficial to the domain's future. At the guild counter, Akihiro received unexpected news. Due to his recent accomplishments, he was officially promoted to Adventurer rank 9. The announcement drew immediate congratulations from those nearby. Along with the promotion came new expectations. From 7th rank onward, adventurers were required to form parties of at least 3 members. The idea of forming a party unsettled him. In his previous life, he had struggled with social connections and rarely maintained close friendships. Standing in the guild hall, he questioned how someone like him was supposed to gather reliable companions in a world still unfamiliar to him. Sensing his hesitation, guild members reassured him. They explained that many adventurers formed groups with people from the same hometown or through shared missions. Given his recent achievements, several individuals were already interested in joining him. While speaking with his companions, he learned they would remain in the village for a while. The atmosphere felt lighter now that the immediate dangers had passed. During the conversation, Lizatia shyly revealed a bracelet on her wrist, explaining that it symbolized a personal promise. Akihiro noticed its significance and offered sincere praise. As their small group stood together, it became clear that they would continue traveling as a team, at least for the time being. Lizatia explained the meaning behind the bracelet on her wrist. In this country, an engagement was marked by the man presenting such a token as a promise of marriage. When the wedding took place, the bracelet would be melted down to create rings for both partners. Embarrassment quickly overtook him, and he insisted that forming a proper party was far more urgent than discussing romance. He apologized for interrupting the mood, trying to redirect the conversation toward practical matters. Later, a guild official reviewed the realities of higher ranks. From 8th rank onward, one could earn a stable living, though the difficulty of requests increased accordingly. Rank 9 served as preparation, a stage meant for gathering reliable companions and understanding personal limits. Trust, the official emphasized, could not be built overnight. In dangerous work where lives were at stake, dependable allies were essential. Reaching rank 9 meant it was time to find such people and form a united party. Walking alone afterward, Akihiro reflected on his past leadership experience. Unlike a game, failure here carried real consequences. Determined to survive in this world, he resolved to assemble a team he could truly rely on back at the house. Akihiro accepted a small pouch handed to him as a travel expense from the Apothecary Guild. Lizatia greeted him from the kitchen, asking if he planned to stay for lunch. The simple domestic scene felt peaceful after the tension at the guild. Sitting on the bed, he considered doing light training despite being told to rest. His body still carried traces of fatigue, and he knew he should not push himself. Meanwhile, Lizatia stood firm, her expression making it clear that she would not allow reckless behavior. Later, quiet filled the room. Without realizing it, Akihiro drifted to sleep. When he opened his eyes again, he noticed Lizatia lying beside the bed, fast asleep just as she had been before. The sight reminded him of the morning he first awoke after collapsing. He gently called out to her, startled by the familiar situation. For a brief moment, it felt like time had repeated itself. Lizatia quickly stirred, confused but alert. With renewed determination in her eyes, she declared her intention to become an adventurer as well. The sudden announcement caught Akihiro completely off guard, leaving him speechless as he tried to process her resolve. On the edge of the bed, Liz faced Akihiro with clear determination. Recent danger had left a deep impression on her, and she no longer wished to remain protected from afar. With her hand over her chest, she resolved to become an adventurer. Surprise crossed Akihiro's face as he absorbed her declaration. Trusting her was not difficult, since he already knew her sincerity and courage. Even so, forming a party was never simple, and danger followed every quest. Responsibility shaped his reasoning. As an apprentice hunter and the beloved daughter of a respected family, Liz carried expectations beyond her own wishes. Such a life decision required careful discussion with her parents. Acting without their knowledge would be careless. Determination only grew stronger within Liz. She insisted on training harder and joining Akihiro's group properly. Although she accepted the need to speak with her father, she believed the final path should be chosen by herself. Meanwhile, concern lingered in Akihiro's mind as he imagined the dangers ahead. Concern, not rejection, motivated his refusal. Protecting her mattered to him just as much as she wished to protect him. Neither side stepped back, yet their shared resolve deepened the bond between them. Becoming an adventurer was not a sudden impulse, but something she had considered carefully. She understood the risks and still chose this path. Confidence filled her expression as she insisted she had skills of her own and was not fragile. Her determination left Akihiro uncertain, though he recognized her seriousness. Hesitation lingered. Rather than dismiss her feelings, he suggested bringing the matter before her parents. If her resolve remained unchanged, the discussion should involve her family. Later that evening, her father sat in silence, arms crossed as he absorbed the news. His stern expression revealed caution rather than anger. The quiet atmosphere showed how seriously he regarded the situation. Liz explained that the idea was her own, and that Akihiro had only advised her to speak honestly with them. When questioned, Akihiro clarified that he had not recruited her. He respected the family's authority and did not wish to overstep. With steady resolve, Liz admitted she was tired of waiting helplessly at home. Recent events had strengthened her desire to act. Sitting at the table together, she declared that she had been thinking about this for a long time. Her future, she believed, should be shaped by her own will. She declared her decision firmly in front of her father, stating that she would follow Akihiro without hesitation. Her father then turned to Akihiro, asking for his honest thoughts. Put on the spot, Akihiro struggled to respond immediately, aware that his answer would influence her future. Gathering himself, he admitted that he had initially tried to dissuade her. Sending her into dangerous places weighed heavily on him. Quests carried unavoidable risks, and injuries were always possible. Experience had taught him that once Liz decided on something, she would not retreat. Her cheerful determination in the past had proven that. Clearly realizing this, Akihiro accepted that refusing her outright would not change her mind. Facing her father directly, Akihiro expressed gratitude that Liz wished to join his party. He acknowledged that trust formed the foundation of any team. With firm conviction, he promised that if danger arose, he would protect her without fail, and asked for the family's acceptance. Silence followed before her father finally spoke. Recognizing his daughter's stubborn strength, he entrusted her to Akihiro's care. Relief filled the room. Liz pledged to work hard as an adventurer, while her father reminded her to continue improving her skills as a hunter. Liz's father finally gave his approval after confirming the harvest had gone well. Relief appeared on Akihiro's face, grateful that permission had been granted. Liz wasted no time announcing that she would register at the guild the next day. Excitement shone in her expression. As they walked together later, Akihiro began thinking seriously about her role. Happiness over her joining was mixed with concern. Reviewing her abilities, he noted her unusual physical strength and experience hunting small and medium animals. However, she lacked power against large monsters. He considered the nature of her strength more carefully. If her body possessed enhanced durability along with muscle power, she might withstand heavy impacts. Advice from a knowledgeable scholar reassured him that such strength would protect her bones as well. Noticing his silence, Liz asked which position he preferred for her. Deep in thought, Akihiro hesitated before answering. He proposed assigning her to the front line with a shield and blunt weapon. Liz readily agreed, determined to give her best. With her role decided, a new issue surfaced in Akihiro's mind. Funding their activities would now become the party's next challenge. Practical concerns quickly replaced their earlier excitement. Blunt weapons would be more cost-efficient than bows, since arrows were consumable and difficult to recover. Even so, proper equipment required money they did not yet have. Heavy armor offered strong protection but demanded a high price, while lighter gear provided less defense. Doubts surfaced in Akihiro's mind about her readiness. Facing even a single goblin on the front line would not be simple. Instead of rushing into danger, he suggested focusing on hunting smaller prey to build experience and improve their skills. After registering at the guild, they could examine available weapons more carefully. While discussing plans, Liz mentioned someone she wanted him to meet. The person was an adventurer of similar rank who was also searching for a party. According to her, this girl came from a farming family and had been working since childhood to support herself. Hearing that she was Liz's longtime friend eased Akihiro's worries. Familiarity with her character suggested reliability, something essential for a balanced team. Since they had already arranged to meet at the guild, the next step became clear. Liz cheerfully confirmed the agreement, and Akihiro prepared himself to greet their potential new companion. Curiosity filled Liz's expression as she wondered what kind of person her friend would appear to be now. Akihiro urged her to walk faster, worried about keeping someone waiting. In contrast, Liz moved at her usual relaxed pace, watching her. He teased that she truly embodied a carefree island temperament. As they continued, Liz described her friend's personality. During childhood, that girl had never hesitated to confront boys who caused trouble. Though known for speaking bluntly, she possessed genuine kindness beneath her bold attitude. Listening to this, Akihiro felt both reassured and slightly tense. A faint unease lingered in his mind. Learning that this potential party member was another girl made him pause, though he reminded himself that skill mattered more than appearances. The guild building soon came into view. Before long, they spotted her waiting outside. Liz cheerfully introduced Akihiro to Fia, an adventurer of the same rank. Fia greeted them with bright energy, clearly comfortable and confident. Her manner of speaking carried a rough edge, shaped by growing up among boys. Akihiro was briefly taken aback by her straightforward tone. Meanwhile, Fia casually teased him about his relationship with Liz, leaving him momentarily speechless, as Liz reacted with flustered embarrassment. Fia stepped closer to Akihiro with open curiosity. She had already heard about his recent achievement, defeating numerous monsters in a single encounter. Impressed by the rumor, she praised his strength and examined him with interest. Akihiro responded modestly, clarifying that the victory had not been accomplished by his power alone. Without hesitation, EAA made a bold remark suggesting she would not mind standing beside him in a more personal role. Her teasing tone carried confidence, but the implication startled both Akihiro and Liz. Liz's composure cracked as frustration rose within her. What began as a simple meeting now hinted at future complications. The encounter marked not only a new partnership, but the start of a turbulent chapter. With bright enthusiasm, a young woman praises Akihiro after learning that he defeated a rank 6 prey alone. His achievement convinces her that he stands above others as a top-tier candidate. Admiration fills her expression as she highlights his strength and reliability. Without hesitation, another girl rejects the idea of Akihiro being treated as a candidate. The atmosphere shifts into tension and confusion. Nearby, Akihiro listens, while trying to understand why the topic has become so serious. Gradually, he realizes the matter involves marriage customs in this world. Keeping a steady posture, Akihiro raises his hand and explains that in his homeland, a man is permitted to have only one wife. His clear declaration brings silence to the room. Shock appears on the faces of the two girls as they process his firm stance, which clashes with their expectations. Doubt crosses one girl's expression as she questions his answer. Akihiro calmly clarifies that he has not even decided on any engagement yet. Furthermore, he states that he has no intention of accepting multiple partners. Afterward, Liz proudly announces that she has registered as an adventurer. Holding up her guild card marked with her rank, she shows determination, signaling the start of her own path forward. Fia speaks confidently about her decision to become an adventurer. She explains that her brother is handling matters at home, leaving her free to choose her own path. Standing before Liz and Akihiro, she asks about Liz's work as a hunter. Her tone carries pride and independence, showing she no longer intends to remain sheltered. Inside the house, the discussion continues. Fia confidently states that Liz will join the party. Liz reacts with surprise, questioning when such a plan was decided. The teasing remark about her past behavior creates mild embarrassment. Soon after, the two girls face each other, with renewed determination. They press their palms together in agreement, expressing mutual commitment to cooperate. Excitement replaces earlier tension as they look forward to fighting side by side again. With energy restored, Fia suggests heading out. Akihiro decides to visit the weapon shop, while Liz admits she has no specific plans. The group moves together, ready to prepare for future quests. At the shop, various weapons line the walls. When asked what she prefers, Liz carefully examines the selection before choosing a heavy hammer. The solid design impresses the others, marking the first step in her growth as an adventurer. Inside the weapon shop, Akihiro studies the blades on display and decides to purchase a proper machete for himself. Nearby, Liz stands proudly while holding the heavy hammer she selected. The equipment suits her well, giving her the appearance of a true adventurer. Eve eagerly encourages Liz to buy more items, but Akihiro reassures her that it is fine. He considers the expense necessary for their future safety. As they leave the shop, Liz expresses gratitude, and the group steps back into the town streets with renewed motivation. Reflecting on the purchase, Akihiro acknowledges that the recent rewards from their hunt allow him to afford these supplies. Liz looks at him with appreciation, relieved that they found equipment that fits her properly. Soon after, Fia proposes going outside the town to practice. She leads them toward a quiet area near the forest where wooden targets stand. Excitement fills her expression as she asks to witness Akihiro's magic in action. Facing the target, Akihiro focuses carefully. He visualizes the wind's shape and rotation, defining its size and speed with precision. With controlled intent, he releases the spell, executing his technique while the two girls watch closely from behind. A sharp burst of wind slams into the wooden target, sending splinters outward. Akihiro turns back calmly, explaining that this is the basic result of his spell. The impact proves his control is stable, though his expression shows he is still evaluating his own performance. Fia steps forward and questions his method, pointing out that his approach resembles that of a complete beginner. Her serious look contrasts with his confusion. Caught off guard, Akihiro listens carefully as she prepares to explain her reasoning. She describes how the spell he used is normally taught at the most elementary level. According to her, proper training requires understanding the structure of magic and sensing the feedback that returns to the caster. His technique, while effective, skips important foundational steps. Continuing her explanation, Fia mentions that intermediate students rely on a simulator to refine their spells. Akihiro reacts with surprise, realizing there is a formal system behind what he has been doing instinctively. After thinking it through, he concludes that he has been running a similar process inside his mind. Fia clarifies that one should first simulate the outcome clearly before executing the spell. Determined to improve, Akihiro decides to test this structured method next time. Akihiro closes his eyes and attempts to recreate the previous spell in his mind. Darkness surrounds him, yet a faint scene begins to form. His own figure appears within the void, standing beneath a distant target. Soon, the vision becomes clearer. He perceives himself from an outside perspective, as if observing a character on a game screen. The target hovers ahead, marked precisely. Realizing that the scene is being projected directly into his thoughts, he studies it carefully while maintaining focus. Although impressed by the clarity, discomfort creeps in. The shifting perspective makes him slightly dizzy, similar to motion sickness. Even so, he notices that he can adjust the distance between himself and the target at will. Control over the viewpoint confirms that this is the simulator Fia described. Testing further, he imagines walking forward. The image responds instantly, mirroring his steps. The realism feels almost like advanced three-dimensional graphics. Despite lingering nausea, he continues observing how smoothly the mental construct reacts. Finally, he pictures executing the wind spell within the simulation. A confirmation-like signal appears in his mind. When he mentally selects it, the spell activates in reality exactly as imagined, proving that the structured method works. While testing another memory, Akihiro attempts to simulate the battle with the giant slime. A warning sign suddenly appears within his mental space. The alert feels different from before, carrying a sense of danger. He pauses, recognizing that recreating such a powerful encounter may not be safe inside the simulator. When he shifts to the image of the dire wolves, the projection abruptly displays an error. The scene breaks apart before fully forming. This unexpected restriction makes him realize that certain memories cannot be reproduced the same way. Returning to awareness, Akihiro kneels slightly, as dizziness hits him again. Liz and Fia quickly check on him. Though shaken, he admits he only feels surprised by the limits of his ability. Understanding dawns on him that others once protected him during those dangerous moments. After recovering, the conversation turns serious. Fia asks where he learned magic. Liz mentions a man from the general store, recalling his background with suspicion. Fia reacts strongly upon hearing the name, revealing that the man left school early and lacked proper education. The revelation casts doubt on Akihiro's source of knowledge, leaving him to reconsider how he developed his unusual methods. The mention of Basta brings sudden clarity. Akihiro recalls that the shopkeeper left elementary school early. That simple fact explains the gaps in the magical foundation he was taught. Realization spreads across his face as he understands why the instructions he received lacked depth. Even so, he admits that visualizing spells so freely might carry hidden risks. Liz praises his ability, impressed that he can perform magic despite limited formal guidance. Her encouragement softens his concern, though he continues to reflect on the potential danger of relying only on imagination. As they walk, Akihiro quietly analyzes the difference between himself and others. Most residents form flat, simple images when casting spells. In contrast, his mental projections appear far more detailed and lifelike. Memories of playing immersive games in his previous life surface in his thoughts. Years of interacting with three-dimensional graphics trained him to picture movement, depth, and impact realistically. While others imagine in 2 dimensions, he instinctively constructs complex scenes with layered detail. Considering the earlier error message, he concludes that outcomes depend heavily on the user's knowledge and experience. His broader visual understanding allows him to predict and shape results more precisely. With their new equipment ready, The group decides to test it immediately. BIA enthusiastically suggests hunting goblins to help Liz gain experience. Liz eagerly agrees, motivated to grow stronger. Akihiro nods, acknowledging that practical training will benefit them all. They arrive at a forested area outside town. While the others look around, Akihiro quietly reminds himself to think more carefully about his magic. The open field and scattered trees provide a suitable hunting ground. The atmosphere is calm, yet alert. Soon, 2 goblins appear from the brush. Fia quickly assesses the situation and proposes striking first. Akihiro instructs Liz to take the one on the right and swing her hammer with full force. Fia prepares to watch for additional threats, while Akihiro positions himself to provide support if needed. As the goblins approach, Akihiro activates his mental simulator. He locks onto the target's chest and adjusts the spell's details, refining the output before release. Though slight dizziness lingers, he confirms the projection is stable and executes the attack. The wind blast strikes precisely, creating an opening, seizing the moment. Liz charges forward and brings her hammer down with determination. The blow lands solidly against the goblin, marking her first decisive strike in battle. Taking advantage of the opening created by Akihiro's wind spell, Liz rushes forward without hesitation. Her grip tightens around the hammer as she leaps into range. With full force, she brings the weapon down onto the goblin. Goblin collapses, its body motionless after the precise strike. Akihiro watches closely, impressed by the accuracy of her attack. There is no wasted movement in her swing. Her focus remains steady, showing no sign of panic or doubt. Dark blood scatters across the grass as the creature's resistance ends completely. Liz steadies her hammer and confirms the kill. The battlefield falls quiet, leaving only the rustling of leaves in the background. Turning back to Akihiro, she calmly prepares for the next step. He notes her skill and acknowledges that they will need proof of the hunt. The task is handled efficiently, without hesitation. As he observes her demeanor, Akihiro reflects on her past training, having once served as an apprentice hunter. She is already familiar with life and death encounters. Unlike a true beginner, she shows no fear in finishing an enemy, proving her readiness for the path ahead. After the battle, Liz smiles modestly and explains that she learned by watching her father hunt. Fia expresses surprise at how well Liz performed, despite it being her first time fighting goblins. Directly Liz's calm response reveals that her skills were shaped through years of observation, rather than formal training. Later, the group reports their results. Their hunt proves highly profitable, with goblin defeats and gathered materials bringing in a substantial reward. The total earnings exceed expectations, leaving them satisfied with the day's effort. Akihiro suggests setting aside part of the income for shared funds to support future activities. Fia reacts with excitement at the amount earned in a single day. She admits that working alone would never produce such results. The idea of operating as a team clearly appeals to her, especially with Akihiro coordinating their actions. Liz quietly shares that traveling in a party feels reassuring compared to hunting alone. Being with others eases the fear she once carried. Though she speaks lightly, her relief is evident. As evening falls, Fia energetically heads home, calling out that she will see them tomorrow. Watching her lively departure, Akihiro notes her boundless energy while Liz stands beside him. He wants to pray for the party's safety and think carefully about magic. After parting ways, he walks toward the stone building, focused on improving himself. The door of a quiet chapel slowly opened as Akihiro stepped inside. A tall stone wall and a simple altar stood at the center of the room, giving the place a calm and sacred atmosphere. Nearby, a nun sat peacefully while reading a book, seemingly used to the silence of the chapel. Soon, he lowered himself onto his knees in front of the altar. Both hands were raised slightly, as he focused his thoughts toward the heavens. Uncertainty filled his mind while he silently asked for guidance. Without warning, a radiant woman appeared before him. Gentle light surrounded her figure, creating a calm yet powerful presence in the chapel. The mysterious woman revealed herself as Deshia, the one who governs healing in this world. Kneeling respectfully, Akihiro faced the goddess, while she observed him with curiosity. His posture remained tense as he gathered the courage to explain his situation. Deshia listened patiently, studying the strange visitor who had come from another world. A serious expression formed on Akihiro's face as he reflected on the knowledge he carried from his original world. The thought of how that knowledge might influence this unfamiliar land weighed heavily on him. Deshia listened calmly as Akihiro shared his concerns about the knowledge he carried from another world. She reflected on his worries with a composed expression. In her view, knowledge alone was not dangerous. The real risk depended on the person who used it. After considering the matter, Deshia reassured him that his worries were not as serious as he believed. Trust had already been placed in him, and she showed confidence in his character. She also explained that the rules governing magic in the world were constantly being adjusted. Once the explanation was finished, Deshia reached out toward Akihiro. A soft glow formed around her hand as she prepared to grant him something. She gently placed her hand on his head and bestowed a special skill upon him. To demonstrate the ability, Deshia temporarily removed Akihiro's sense of pain. She calmly instructed him to test it by cutting his own arm. Although confused and nervous, Akihiro followed the instruction and pressed a knife against his skin. Blood slowly dripped from the deep wound while Akihiro stared in shock. The cut was severe enough to expose bone beneath the flesh. Panic immediately followed, as the reality of the injury became clear. Shock spread across Akihiro's face as he stared at the deep wound on his arm. Even though no pain reached his senses, the sight of the injury frightened him. Deshia remained calm beside him and assured him that he was safe. Instead of focusing on fear, she encouraged him to concentrate his thoughts. Akihiro closed his eyes and focused deeply. Inside his mind, he carefully pictured the damaged flesh, slowly repairing itself. The torn skin began to reconnect in his imagination, layer by layer. Once the mental image was clear, a simple command appeared within his interface. Akihiro confirmed the action and activated the process. Realization quickly followed as he understood that the skill had responded to his intention. A faint light gathered around the injured arm. The wound began to close at an incredible speed, restoring the skin within seconds. Akihiro watched the change in disbelief as the injury completely disappeared. What remained was only the memory of the cut that had been there moments earlier. Deshia observed the result with quiet satisfaction. She explained that such instant recovery resembled what many would call divine magic. However, Akihiro's method relied on something different. She described how a person could call for help by directing their will from deep within their soul. Complex words or structured spells were not always necessary. What truly mattered was the intention behind the request. Akihiro listened carefully as he processed the explanation. Despite appearing calm, she explained that her duties kept her constantly occupied. Akihiro felt grateful that she had answered his call, even while being busy. Deshia acknowledged his effort in reaching out and allowed him to see her form as a sign of respect. The connection between them weakened as the divine figure returned to her responsibilities. Akihiro remained kneeling alone on the stone floor as the silent building returned to its normal state. Soon after, a notification appeared within Akihiro's mysterious interface. The system confirmed that he had obtained a new ability related to divine magic. Realization spread across his face as he understood the importance of what he had received. Later, Akihiro stepped out from the chapel and returned to the building where he was staying. A woman nearby greeted him with gentle concern, having heard about his situation. After confirming that his body was completely fine, Akihiro reassured her that everything was under control. Akihiro met Liz outside near the house. She mentioned that dinner preparations were almost finished, and there was still some time before the meal. Instead of waiting idly, Liz suggested using the time to practice. With excitement, she brought out a round shield and proposed training her defensive skills. She asked if her stance looked correct as she prepared herself. Akihiro nodded and explained that he would attack unpredictably. The goal was simple: Liz needed to block every strike using the shield. The training began immediately. Akihiro swung the wooden stick toward the shield. Each strike landed directly against the center, producing sharp sounds as the blows connected. Liz maintained her focus and raised the shield at the right moment every time. Akihiro paused briefly to observe her movements. He noticed that Liz consistently caught the strikes at the center of the shield. The precision impressed him, and he suspected that her experience with hunting had sharpened her sense of timing and direction. After watching her performance, Akihiro offered additional advice. A shield could be more than a defensive tool if used properly. By striking an opponent's weapon or disrupting their balance, it could create openings during battle. As the training session continued outside, a man carrying a large pack approached the house. Liz quickly noticed him and greeted him with excitement. Her father had just returned home after a long day. Soon after, the three of them gathered around the dinner table. A warm meal was prepared, with fresh bread and simple dishes placed in the center. Liz happily shared news about the money she had recently earned from hunting. Liz's father listened carefully as the conversation continued. He realized that both Akihiro and Liz had contributed to their recent success. While acknowledging their efforts, he reminded them not to become overconfident. The discussion turned toward Liz's abilities as an adventurer. Her father noted that she had shown impressive skill when dealing with goblins earlier. Liz modestly explained that she had simply tried to follow the example set by her father over the years. Encouraged by the praise, Liz declared that she would work even harder to improve herself and earn more in the future. Akihiro smiled as he watched her determination. Meanwhile, her father offered one final piece of advice, reminding her to continue sharpening her skills, while always staying cautious in dangerous situations. The next morning, Akihiro helped with simple chores around the house. He carried plates after the meal and prepared to wash them. Earlier, he had also drawn water from the well. Just as he did every morning, Liz quickly protested, worried that Akihiro might be pushing himself too hard. She warned him that working so much could make him collapse from exhaustion. Akihiro responded calmly and reassured her that everything was under control. Still, Liz insisted that he should not worry about housework. From her point of view, being an adventurer already required enough effort and energy. Akihiro simply nodded, acknowledging her concern while appreciating her kindness. Later that night, Akihiro returned to his room and sat quietly on the bed. The events of the day reminded him that he now possessed unusual abilities. Since he had even spoken directly with a goddess, he decided to organize what he knew about magic and the strange system connected to it. He began testing his ability by imagining different possibilities. One idea involved picturing himself flying through the sky, but the attempt produced no result. Realizing that the approach might be too vague, Akihiro shifted his attention toward a small piece of paper on the table. Akihiro began a small experiment inside his room. A single scrap of paper rested on the table before him. Instead of relying on the simulator system, he focused purely on imagination. In his mind, he pictured wind pressure forming around the paper while holding its shape in place. Moments later, the paper trembled slightly. It slowly lifted from the table and hovered in the air for a brief moment. Akihiro's eyes widened as he realized that something had actually happened. The discovery left him deep in thought. Akihiro stepped outside under the night sky, considering what the result might mean. If such a simple image could create wind strong enough to move an object, then the possibilities might extend far beyond a small experiment. Determined to test the theory further, he imagined wind flowing from the soles of his feet while picturing his body becoming lighter. The idea of floating slowly formed in his mind. A burst of force pushed against the ground beneath his feet. His body lifted slightly as the wind pressure supported his weight. Akihiro realized that releasing the image at the right time allowed the effect to take shape exactly as he imagined. Akihiro continued experimenting with the wind beneath his feet. By adjusting the direction of the force, he discovered he could move forward, backward, or sideways, while floating above the ground. Turning his body also became easier as he shifted the pressure of the imagined wind. As he gained confidence, Akihiro began moving faster through the night air. The sensation reminded him of skating smoothly across a surface, except now the ground was far below him. Inside the house, Liz noticed movement outside and looked through the window. To her surprise, she spotted Akihiro hovering in the air while practicing. Concern quickly replaced her curiosity, and she rushed outside to call him. She reminded him that he had already been working hard all day. Before Liz could say more, Akihiro suddenly lifted her into his arms and activated the wind beneath his feet. The two of them rose gently into the night sky. Liz's eyes widened in surprise as the ground slowly grew distant beneath them. Still floating in the air, Akihiro smiled calmly and explained the situation in the simplest way he could. Liz stared at him with amazement while trying to process what had just happened. They stood close to each other near the house, under the quiet night sky. Liz suddenly became aware of how close they were, and her face turned red with embarrassment. Akihiro also realized the situation and froze for a moment. After calming down, Akihiro explained that he was still clumsy with the flying technique. He believed that with more practice, he would be able to control his movement more precisely. Liz looked at him with admiration as she reflected on how quickly Akihiro had improved. His determination and constant effort impressed her. Inspired by his progress, she decided that she would train harder as well, so she would not fall behind. He realized that the abilities he had gained were still developing, yet they were gradually becoming powerful tools for survival. A young girl happily recalled the moment she moved across a frozen surface. Her bright expression showed how much the experience meant to her. In her memory, she had been gliding through the air smoothly, almost as if she were sliding across ice. Around her, the others listened, while she continued explaining the event with energetic gestures. Being lifted into the air had surprised her the most. The height made the experience unforgettable, especially when she realized she had been carried higher than their house. Meanwhile, Akihiro calmly reflected on what had happened the night before. The girls had clearly enjoyed the unusual experience. Their excitement remained even the next morning as they continued talking about it. Soon afterward, the excitement spread to the others. One of the girls became eager to try the same experience herself. Standing nearby, the first girl looked delighted while remembering how fast her heart had raced during the flight. However, the atmosphere changed when the idea of repeating the activity became serious. Akihiro responded with a firm and cautious expression. His reaction caused the girls to pause immediately. Akihiro watched the small girl closely and suddenly realized something important. Despite her energetic behavior, she was still very young. The thought crossed his mind when he remembered that she was only 15 years old. Seeing her demand the same treatment as the others made him hesitate. Standing between the two girls, Akihiro quietly reconsidered the situation. One of them was small enough to easily climb onto his back, and the other waited nearby with curiosity. He thought about how things would be if they were still living in Japan. Concern still lingered in Akihiro's mind. The idea of letting two young girls fight each other left him uneasy. When one of them noticed his troubled expression, she looked up at him with concern. Even after hearing their explanation, a small sense of guilt remained in Akihiro's heart. The girls stood together confidently, completely in agreement with each other. Their synchronized reactions made the moment feel strangely amusing. Soon afterward, the mood changed once again as Akihiro carried one of the girls on his back and moved quickly through the air. The ride filled her with excitement as she shouted happily while urging him to go faster. After the excitement finally settled, the group prepared to return to their work. One of the girls quickly lost interest in resting and complained about feeling bored. Akihiro turned his attention to Liz and gently reminded her that they had already spent enough time enjoying themselves. Akihiro responded with a relaxed attitude and accepted the request without hesitation. Whether it was a piggyback ride or a simple gesture of comfort, he did not mind helping them. Soon the group resumed their work in the surrounding fields, gathering plants and materials together. By the time their work ended, the group had gathered an impressive amount of materials. One of the girls happily announced that they had earned nearly the same amount as the day before. The news filled everyone with satisfaction. When they reached the town, the group began to separate. VA and Liz headed toward the general store with cheerful excitement. Akihiro watched them walk away while they talked eagerly about the items they wanted to see. After confirming their plans, the group agreed to meet again later. With the others gone, Akihiro continued toward the blacksmith shop alone. Entering the building, he was greeted by the familiar sight of tools, barrels, and equipment stacked around the workshop. He arrived at the blacksmith's workshop and picked up one of the spears from the display. The craftsman explained that the shop had several short spears in stock, and they were known for being strong and reliable even after frequent use. Outside the workshop, Akihiro gripped the spear and attempted a full swing. The motion immediately surprised him. The weight of the real weapon was far heavier than he had expected. After returning inside, Akihiro asked about the price. The blacksmith calmly explained that the spear would cost 70,000 and that a sheath would be included as part of the service. Hearing the amount caused Akihiro to pause. Despite the cost, Akihiro slowly convinced himself that the purchase could be treated as a long-term investment. After considering it for a moment, he decided to buy the spear. Once the deal was settled, he asked the blacksmith for some parchment and something to write with as well. The blacksmith pointed him toward a nearby room where parchment, ink, and a pen had already been prepared on a desk. He invited Akihiro to use the space freely. With the materials ready, Akihiro stepped into the quiet room, preparing to begin the next task he had planned. Inside the quiet room, Akihiro placed the parchment on the desk and prepared the ink and pen. Before beginning, he briefly checked his phone, looking at stored information he had saved earlier. From what he had observed, collecting water each morning demanded a great deal of labor. Buckets needed to be lowered into the well and pulled back up again, often several times. Using his phone as a reference, Akihiro examined a diagram showing the mechanism of a hand pump. The encyclopedia stored on his device provided a clear explanation of how the tool worked. If such a pump could be used here, drawing water from wells would require far less effort. After finishing the drawing, Akihiro presented the parchment to the blacksmith. The craftsman studied the paper closely, examining the unfamiliar design. His expression turned serious as he tried to understand how the strange mechanism would function. As the blacksmith looked more carefully, realization slowly appeared on his face. The design showed a simple structure that used a lever and a pumping mechanism to raise water from the well. He immediately recognized its potential usefulness. If the idea spread far enough, even the king might eventually hear about it. Control of the area belonged to the local viscount, whose father held the rank of duke. Because of that, any useful invention could quickly become known among powerful people. The blacksmith continued explaining the situation calmly. Producing and selling the device alone would be difficult for Akihiro. A large trading company would be better suited to handle manufacturing and distribution. Through such a company, Akihiro could still receive a share of the profits. While discussing the matter further, the blacksmith admitted his personal motivation. His workshop required a large amount of water every day, making the design extremely useful to him. Excitement soon replaced the earlier seriousness. After studying the drawing again, the blacksmith concluded that the structure was simple enough to reproduce. He promised to create a prototype if given a little time. Akihiro felt relieved, and decided to leave the project in his hands. Before parting, the two men introduced themselves properly. The blacksmith gave his name as Ness, while Akihiro shared his own. After confirming where the finished prototype should be delivered, Ness suddenly embraced Akihiro with gratitude. After their discussion ended, Akihiro stepped outside the workshop and walked along the quiet street. Behind him, Ness had already become extremely motivated. The blacksmith loudly declared that there was no time to rest, and that he would start creating the prototype immediately. While walking through town, Akihiro carried the newly purchased spear with him. He thought about the possible impact of the invention. If the hand pump design truly worked and spread throughout the region, it could make everyday life much easier for many people. As he continued walking, a new concern suddenly appeared in his mind. Akihiro stopped for a moment and wondered whether introducing such technology might cause trouble. The thought made him uneasy. Soon afterward, Akihiro reached out for guidance. He explained that he was worried about the possibility that bringing the hand pump to this world might disrupt the natural development of technology. Electoa calmly reassured him that the invention would not create serious problems. According to the explanation, something similar would likely have been developed in the near future anyway. Hearing this eased Akihiro's concerns. Akihiro walked through the town street after finishing his business at the blacksmith's workshop. While moving forward, he thought about the strange situation he often found himself in. Ideas and knowledge from his previous world sometimes led him to create things that seemed unusual here. Soon he encountered the two girls returning from their own errands. They quickly noticed him and approached with cheerful expressions. One of them proudly showed a small bracelet she had just obtained from the shop. The excitement grew as the girls revealed that the bracelets were matching accessories, meant for everyone in their group. Wearing the same bracelet made them feel connected, almost like members of a small team working together. Afterward, the group prepared to head home together. The girls remained in high spirits while proudly wearing their new bracelets. Akihiro watched them with a calm smile, aware that although challenges still awaited them. In a forest clearing, the young knight trains with steady determination. She swings her hammer with precision while holding her shield firmly in front of her. Akihiro and their small companion watch as she strikes each target accurately. She reports that she has already defeated nearly 50 goblins. Suddenly, a presence moves behind them. After driving away another wave of goblins, Akihiro reflects on their progress. By midday, they have already defeated 20 monsters. The knight shows clear pride in their achievement. To her, their teamwork proves how capable they have become in this unfamiliar world. Despite the success, Akihiro grows uneasy. Reaching 20 goblins once required an entire day. The recent increase in their numbers feels unusual. He suspects the rise may not be temporary. The knight suggests they continue observing the situation carefully. They return to their small house earlier than expected. With their work complete, they decide to spend the remaining time doing chores. A woman nearby notices their early arrival and reacts with surprise. Akihiro offers to fetch water from the well and borrows a jug. The knight accompanies him willingly. Together, they continue their routine, unaware that the rising goblin activity may soon threaten their calm life. At the village well, the knight easily lifts a large water jug, surprising Akihiro with her strength. She carries it without difficulty while he prepares the rope and bucket. Clear water splashes as the bucket reaches the surface. The well is sturdy and deep, built from solid stone. Soon after, both of them begin washing clothes by hand. Akihiro kneels beside a wooden tub, scrubbing fabric carefully, while the knight works nearby with steady rhythm. The repeated motion leaves his hands tired. As he washes, he realizes how valuable modern machines were. While resting briefly, Akihiro recalls his mother hauling water every day. The memory deepens his understanding of how exhausting such labor can be. Work that depends heavily on water demands constant strength and patience. Later, he decides to check on the progress of a planned water pump. Entering a workshop marked by a hanging sign, he prepares to ask about its development. Inside, a craftsman welcomes Akihiro warmly. They discuss building a wooden model first, then creating a bronze sample. Through careful testing, Akihiro hopes to reduce the village's burden and make daily life more manageable. Akihiro receives encouraging news from the craftsman. The guild has already been contacted, and a researcher will be dispatched to assist with the project. Hearing this, Akihiro feels relieved. The quick response suggests that the idea of building a water pump is being taken seriously. The craftsman explains that the higher authorities have also been informed. Development will move forward step by step, starting from testing and evaluation. Although cautious, Akihiro listens carefully. Trust must be earned, especially when the project could affect the entire village. Confidence fills the room as the craftsman assures him that skilled people are involved. The designer has already reviewed the plans thoroughly, with experienced hands supporting the work. The foundation of the project appears stable. They agree that arranging a proper meeting would help clarify details. Planning together will reduce mistakes and improve efficiency. Akihiro leaves the building with renewed determination. Later, he reunites with his companions in the forest. The knight proudly displays proof of their latest hunt. Piles of goblin remains show how hard they have worked in his absence. Though he arrived late due to errands, he studies the results seriously. The knight remains energetic, insisting they can handle more monsters. Akihiro, however, notices the steady increase in goblin encounters. Even within a short time, they are forced into repeated battles. While tracking movement deeper in the woods, they confirm that only goblins are appearing. No other creatures show signs of disturbance. Akihiro reflects on this detail carefully. If other monsters were active, they would have sensed them as well. By the end of the day, dozens of goblins lie defeated on the ground. 60 have been hunted in a single day, far beyond normal numbers. Although the knight believes the hunt is sufficient, Akihiro studies the scene with concern. Such growth cannot be ignored. As they prepare to return to the village, unease weighs on him. The number of goblins in this forest should not sustain such rapid encounters. He resolves to report the matter to the guild before they leave. Sudden movement rustles through the trees. He recalls a similar event from a game in his previous world, where a single species multiplied rapidly before overwhelming an area. If this is an overflow event, the danger could escalate quickly. Without confirmation and preparation, the village may soon face a large-scale attack. She has completed enough assignments that the promotion exam is waived. The reward for defeating 60 goblins amounts to a large sum of gold. Her rank rises to 9, reflecting her steady improvement. Praise follows her achievement, yet Liz remains modest, despite the recognition. The speed of her growth surprises even the staff. Only a few days have passed since registration, making the accomplishment stand out. After finishing their report, the two part ways briefly. Liz decides to continue training rather than rest. Akihiro reminds her to stay cautious before heading deeper into the guild building. Though she is strong, the rising goblin numbers remain on his mind. Inside, Akihiro meets Hardis, who has reviewed the latest results. The report confirms remarkable performance once again. Documents are presented for discussion. The steady increase in goblin activity is becoming difficult to dismiss. Hardis explains that field communication still relies mainly on parchment. Replacement methods are limited and slow. As Akihiro listens, he recognizes the weakness in their information system. If an emergency occurs, delayed reports could cost lives. Beneath the polite demeanor lies someone trained in reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. Realizing this, Akihiro understands that pretending ignorance will not work. The situation requires direct discussion. With a steady voice, Akihiro states that he wants to ask about the goblins. Hardis immediately focuses on him, sensing the seriousness behind the request. The atmosphere shifts from casual conversation to quiet tension. They relocate to a conference room to speak privately. Doors close, sealing the space from outside ears. Hardis admits he anticipated this topic. Akihiro reacts sharply, recognizing that the guild may already suspect unusual developments. Documents are placed on the table. Akihiro reviews reports detailing goblin subjugation numbers. The data shows a gradual rise over 10 days, followed by a sharp increase within the last 2 or 3. Seated across from Hardis, Akihiro concludes that the numbers are undeniably climbing. The scout acknowledges that the data matches expectations, yet the cause remains uncertain. Both understand that without identifying the source of this surge, the village could soon face a threat beyond routine hunts. Hardis warns that a goblin commander may emerge soon, and Akihiro realizes the threat is escalating rapidly. Seated firmly at the table, the young man folds his hands and presents a serious report. His steady gaze reflects the weight of the situation. He states that the likelihood of a goblin commander appearing is high, implying a significant shift in threat level for nearby villages. Across from him, the listener reacts with visible concern. A drop of sweat runs down his cheek as he struggles to grasp the meaning of a commander. Uncertainty fills his expression, revealing that this development goes beyond ordinary goblin activity. Further details clarify the danger. Goblins typically raid villages once a year, especially near the end of the year, seeking food to endure winter shortages. Under normal conditions, these attacks involve small, uncoordinated groups. Illustrations of goblins reinforce the explanation. Rather than acting independently or in scattered bands, they begin operating under structured guidance. Organization replaces chaos, and their movements display deliberate planning. Eventually, the full scale of the threat becomes evident. Smaller groups combine into larger forces, expanding into a single army. Instead of isolated raids, they storm villages simultaneously. Several documents are spread across the table, displaying subjugation records from the past 30 years. After reviewing the data, the composed official explains that the pattern suggests the situation should not become a major problem. Each year, when goblin activity rises, the kingdom assembles knights and dispatches them to suppress the threat. A closer look at the records reveals a troubling detail. Subjugation numbers spike sharply for a single month every winter, usually just before the year ends. Those peaks match the timing of the goblin raids. Although this trend has repeated consistently, some years show far more cases than usual. The younger listener raises a serious concern about how to respond if raids begin earlier than expected. In reply, the official outlines the current system. Until the knights are mobilized, adventurers are responsible for defending villages. Questions shift toward scale. The number of goblins varies annually, but estimates range between 300 and 400. Doubt appears on the listener's face as he wonders whether adventurers alone can withstand such numbers. Acknowledging past losses, the official admits that casualties have occurred among adventurers. Despite this, previous raids were contained. However, failing to adapt to changing conditions could eventually lead to the kingdom's failure. After reviewing the data, he realizes the commander has appeared much earlier than usual, meaning the countdown to the village raid has already begun. The official explains that such an order falls under the kingdom's authority, not the guild's riders have likely already been dispatched, and restrictions will soon follow. Accepting the situation, he requests more detailed information. Attempting to withdraw would only draw suspicion once reports circulate to every guild. Realizing escape is unrealistic, he decides to cooperate and prepares himself for involvement. The answer comes quickly. Scouts have already been sent, and the attack is predicted to begin in about a week. That short time frame leaves limited room for preparation. Because the event is unexpected, the knights may not arrive in time. Even if they are mobilized immediately, concern deepens as he asks whether the commander possesses special abilities beyond ordinary goblins. The response suggests differences in intelligence and coordination, though the full extent remains uncertain. Finally, it is revealed that commanders are only slightly stronger physically. However, their traits vary each year, and in some cases, magic proves ineffective against them, complicating any defense strategy. The official outlines the mobilization plan in detail. Around 50 adventurers are expected to form the front line. Necessary equipment will be lent without interest, and starting the next day, the reward for goblin extermination will increase by half. Listening carefully, the young man grows uneasy. The meeting has taken longer than expected, and he worries about his unaware companions. A difficult request forms in his mind as he considers whether two members of his party could quietly withdraw before the situation escalates. Keeping such information hidden within a party would be challenging, yet trust can justify disclosure. Faced with that answer, the young man imagines how the two girls in question might react, and doubt quickly surfaces about persuading them. After expressing brief gratitude, he prepares to leave. Thoughts race through his mind as he anticipates possible reactions. The idea of convincing them to retreat quietly seems unrealistic, and he recognizes the difficulty of avoiding involvement. Before departing fully, he notices the guild's hierarchy. The composed official stands as the guild master, holding direct authority. Realizing the man's importance, the young adventurer understands that any further decisions will require careful consideration and respect for command. The meeting concludes formally, and both sides exchange polite farewells. Outside, the town remains calm under a clear sky, its quiet streets giving no sign of the looming threat. The young adventurer steps away from the guild building, walking alone along the stone road. He reflects on the situation. The sudden appearance of a commander feels like a harsh lesson thrown at him without warning. He reassures himself that goblins are usually simple creatures with low intelligence. Upon returning home, he finds his companions gathered around a meal. One of the girls senses immediately that something is wrong. Although he apologizes for arriving late, his tense expression does not go unnoticed. Concern grows as the girl studies his face and realizes an issue must have occurred. After thanking the others for the meal, he asks to speak privately. She agrees at once, understanding that the matter involves the entire party and requires careful attention. Facing her directly, he hesitates. The weight of responsibility prevents him from revealing everything immediately. He decides to postpone the explanation until the following day, knowing that the coming discussion will determine their next course of action. Standing before Liz, He lowers his voice and apologizes for causing concern. She listens quietly and accepts his decision to speak the next day. Although she senses the weight on his mind, she does not press further before leaving. She reassures him with a gentle smile, making it clear that worry comes naturally to her. He watches her step away and returns to his room alone. Sitting on the edge of his bed, he exhales heavily, unable to relax despite the quiet surroundings. Memories surface in fragments. In the past, he only had to risk himself. Now the situation is different. Taking two 15-year-old girls into a battlefield forces him to reconsider his judgment. Determination slowly replaces hesitation. He concludes that avoiding involvement is impossible. Allowing the girls to leave without explanation would only raise suspicion, and they would never accept being left behind. Morning arrives with bright energy as FIA greets them cheerfully. Liz quickly notices their serious expressions. While they deny having argued, concern lingers in her eyes. Watching them both, he realizes preparation must begin immediately. He gathers Liz and FEA in a borrowed conference room to discuss an urgent matter requiring their attention. Inside a formal hall, two young women sit quietly as a serious briefing unfolds. They are informed that goblins spawn in large numbers every year. Usually, the knights handle the extermination before the year ends. This time, uncertainty surrounds the situation. He leading the discussion explains that this year's outbreak is expected to occur earlier than planned. Because of that shift, the knights may fail to arrive in time. Responsibility for defending the village could fall entirely on local adventurers. Confidential details are then revealed, along with a strict order to keep the matter secret. Sharing the information with family members is forbidden. Such restrictions make the danger feel even more severe. Surprise and concern appear on their faces as the reality sinks in. Estimates suggest that a single goblin group may reach 400 creatures. That number is difficult to imagine clearly. Visualizing twice the number of villagers attacking at once forces them to understand the seriousness of the threat, rather than waiting passively. The strategy focuses on reducing goblin numbers before the main force strikes. Determination gradually replaces hesitation as they accept their duty in the coming battle. Changing weapons would require time to master, so improving armor defense seems more practical. Despite that reasoning, excitement rises at the thought of new weapons. The guild supports their efforts by approving interest-free loans, giving them a chance to upgrade their gear before the hunt. Soon after, goblins appear from the north, rushing through the forest at high speed. 3 of them charge forward with crude weapons in hand. The sudden encounter forces the group to react immediately as the enemy closes the distance. Steel and magic move at once. Blades cut through the attackers while spells enhance each strike. Within a short time, dozens of goblins fall. Even so, exhaustion builds from constant movement and repeated use of magic. During a brief pause, the young man reflects on his abilities. Both magic and recognition skills have limits, each with a range of about 20 meters. Training determines their effectiveness, and understanding those limits becomes essential for survival. As another threat approaches from behind, he considers avoiding direct combat. Throwing a spear from a distance might reduce risk. Though unsure of his strength, a new possibility forms in his mind, pushing him to attempt a different strategy. Akihiro thrusts his spear forward with precise timing, piercing a charging goblin before it can strike. Another creature rushes toward him, but he maintains control and finishes the exchange quickly. Once the enemy collapses, he pauses to assess himself. After confirming the area is clear, the group decides to end the hunt for the day. They set a target of defeating 80 goblins daily to steadily reduce the threat. At the guild counter, they calculate the completion reward and realize the total earnings could be significant if they maintain this pace. Payment is handed over in stacked coins. The increase in reward becomes clear, reflecting the rising danger. Akihiro watches the others react with surprise as they understand the scale of the payout. The weight of the money bags feels substantial in their hands. Excitement spreads through the group, and their motivation rises along with their earnings. Back at their base, plans for further training are made. Determined to improve, they agree to sharpen their skills the next day. Akihiro suggests checking their equipment first, knowing preparation will decide their survival. Akihiro visits a workshop and requests a modification to his spear. While his companions leave for training, he stays behind to handle the adjustment. The craftsman accepts the weapon and explains that the work will take a few days. Akihiro expresses gratitude, knowing the improvement may increase his safety in battle. Inside the shop, the craftsman examines the spear carefully, especially the tip. He questions whether altering that section might defeat its original purpose. Akihiro confirms that reinforcing the tip is exactly what he wants. The craftsman estimates 3 to 4 days for completion and sets the cost at 5,000. Akihiro agrees without hesitation. Later he reviews his skill information and notices steady improvement across several abilities. None of his attributes have decreased, which reassures him that his training has been effective. While walking through town, he meets an acquaintance who mentions hearing about the recent dire wolf incident. The conversation reminds Akihiro of his growing experience. His thoughts shift toward his water attribute control. Determined to improve, he decides to seek guidance. He approaches someone knowledgeable and asks to learn water attribute control. Although natural talent plays a role, he understands that mastering the technique will require effort and consistent practice. While discussing his abilities, Akihiro admits that he has mainly used water magic for drinking. The confession surprises the person teaching him. Although water is clearly useful, relying on it only for basic needs shows how little he has explored its potential. His instructor begins outlining a more structured approach. Water attribute control depends on temperature differences, distance from a reference point, and precise execution. Akihiro listens carefully, realizing that he lacks even a clear formula for activating it properly. Attempting a demonstration, Akihiro gathers water according to the stated conditions. He specifies the amount, adjusts the temperature, and directs it to appear above his hand. The spell activates, but the water spills awkwardly. Further explanation follows. By manipulating temperature, water could become hot enough to cause burns. That idea expands his understanding of combat applications. For the moment, however, he focuses on mastering the basics before experimenting further later. He prepares to continue training with FIA. She notices he had been practicing separately and reacts with curiosity. Akihiro confirms his efforts, aware that steady improvement will require patience and consistent practice. Thesia studies Akihiro's face closely and notices the fatigue he tries to hide. Dark circles under his eyes reveal a lack of sleep. She points out that he cannot conceal his condition from her. With a calmer tone, she reminds him that while he stays here, he is considered family. Comparing him to her own son, she admits her worry comes from affection. Although he feels responsible for many things, she insists he is not alone and should not carry every burden by himself. Akihiro reflects on how he was often told the same thing in his previous life. The words strike a familiar place in his mind. When he tries to brush it off, she lightly taps his forehead, stopping him from dismissing her concern so easily. Lowering his head, he apologizes for causing worry. Thesia reassures him that he can rely on them more. Her warm smile eases the tension in his chest, and he begins to accept that support does not mean weakness. Later, alone in the yard, he examines his hand and considers his slow progress with magic. Even if improvement comes in small steps, he resolves to continue training steadily, determined to grow stronger without pushing himself beyond his limits. Alone with his thoughts, Akihiro reminds himself that panic will not make him stronger. His goal is clear: gain enough strength to protect the two girls from harm. Memories of recent words echo in his mind, urging him not to carry everything alone. That evening, the house rests quietly under the night sky. A warm meal is prepared to match the cool air. Steam rises from a bowl of soup, placed at the center of the table, creating a simple but comforting atmosphere. Conversation flows easily over dinner. The adults comment on preparing for winter while light teasing fills the room. The meat is tender, and the meal feels satisfying after days of tension. Ordinary family moments soften the weight on Akihiro's mind. As laughter fades, he admits that the place feels calming. The strain he carried since the previous day gradually eases. Surrounded by warmth, he allows himself a brief moment of rest. Later, he resumes training outside with a homemade weapon as a substitute spear. He practices deflecting, parrying, and slashing in sequence. Checking the time, he reflects that although his knowledge comes from experience rather than formal teaching, after finishing his training, Akihiro checks his stamina and realizes it has improved. In the past, he could barely last 50 minutes, yet now he can continue for over an hour. Sweat runs down his face, but his body feels stronger than before. Liz approaches and tells him she prepared hot water for him. Standing close, Liz gently reminds him not to push himself too hard. She assures him that they are by his side. Her words sound familiar, echoing advice he has heard before. Akihiro admits that he tends to handle everything alone, a habit he has carried for years. Looking directly at him, Liz explains that everyone cares about him as much as he cares about protecting them. Focusing only on their safety while ignoring his own would only cause them pain. Her sincerity makes him pause. With a steady voice, Akihiro expresses his gratitude. He thanks her for always supporting and reassuring him. He realizes he cannot keep moving forward by himself, and decides he wants to rely on her and EVA more from now on. Understanding settles between them. He acknowledges that forcing his will alone is unfair. Determined to change, he chooses to grow stronger together, rather than in isolation. Liz promises to grow stronger beside Akihiro, vowing to fight with him, and remain at his side forever. A quiet forest clearing becomes the starting point of a training mission. 3 adventurers stand together while the objective is explained. Reports say several goblins have been seen near the village, so the group plans to search the surrounding woods. Around 10 goblins are expected to be somewhere in the area, gliding lightly above the ground. The young man moves through the trees using hover movement. Careful control is needed to maintain his speed while observing the surroundings. His role is to scout ahead and locate the goblins first. Further inside the forest, 2 goblins wander through the bushes while searching the area. From a distance, the young man quietly observes their movements. Soon after, the creatures notice his presence. Their attention quickly shifts toward him as the situation changes. More goblins begin appearing nearby as the young man continues watching. A small group gathers together, showing that their numbers are larger than expected. Their movement suggests the creatures are spreading through the forest. Close observation reveals the reason for their activity. Several goblins are busy gathering food from the forest floor. The discovery suggests that their camp or gathering place may be somewhere close by. Akihiro moves quickly through the forest while several goblins chase after him, using hover movement. He keeps a short distance above the ground to maintain speed and control. The creatures follow closely, drawn by his presence. While leading them away, he observes their behavior carefully. That lone goblin quickly runs through the grass in a different direction. Its movement does not match the aggressive pursuit shown by the others. The young man notices this and begins to wonder about the reason behind it. After observing them for a while, he begins to understand their behavior. The goblins appear to act in different roles. Some wander through the forest exploring the area. Others focus on gathering food from the ground. Eventually, a larger group of goblins gathers together nearby. Their numbers are greater than expected, confirming that many of them are active in the area at times. Some of the goblins even argue and push each other, showing signs of disorder among them. With enough information gathered, the young man decides to return. He flies back through the trees and reunites with the 2 girls waiting at the edge of the forest. The scouting mission is complete, and the group can now prepare for the next step. After returning from scouting, the young man quickly informs the 2 girls about the approaching goblins. The enemy group is moving closer through the forest, leaving little time to prepare. Liz and FIA step forward and take the front position as the vanguard. A final plan is set before the goblins arrive. The young man reminds the 2 girls to focus on defense and support each other during the fight. They are told to attack only when a clear opportunity appears. Both girls respond immediately and steady their stance. In the distance, the goblins begin rushing through the forest. Soon after, a large group of goblins charges forward while shouting aggressively. Liz and FIA stand firmly at the front, holding their weapons ready. Behind them, the young man grips his weapon and watches the battlefield carefully. The vanguard acts first. Liz moves quickly and strikes one goblin with a powerful blow. At the same time, FIA blocks an incoming attack using her shield and counters immediately. From the rear position, the young man joins the fight once an opening appears. With controlled swings, he cuts down several goblins that attempt to surround the group. From behind the vanguard, he reminds Liz and Iefaya to stay aware of each other and focus on defense. His voice carries across the battlefield while goblins continue pressing forward. The 2 girls maintain their formation while holding back the approaching enemies. Fia raises her shield and blocks an incoming strike from a goblin rushing toward her. The impact pushes against the shield, but she keeps her stance steady. At the same moment, another goblin suddenly appears from a blind spot and lunges forward. The attack lands before she can fully avoid it. A spear pierces into Liz's side, leaving her injured during the clash. Even so, she refuses to collapse and steadies herself, while gripping her weapon. Despite the injury, Liz gathers her strength and finishes off the last goblin standing nearby. The final enemy falls to the ground, bringing the battle to an end. Watching the fight unfold, the young man begins to question whether the training was too difficult for them at this stage. Once the battlefield quiets down, he quickly approaches Liz to check her condition. Blood stains her clothes where the spear struck. Without delay, he uses divine magic to heal the injury. After the battle ends, the young man checks on Liz to make sure her injury has healed properly. Divine magic closes the wound, leaving no visible scar behind. Liz looks at the healed area with surprise while thanking him for the help. The group takes a moment to rest after the intense fight. EFIA approaches and checks on the young man while Liz stands nearby. Relief spreads among them as they confirm that no one suffered serious harm. Once the group regains their composure, the young man reflects on the training exercise. He decides that future training should include real hunting situations to improve their teamwork in actual combat. Before leaving, one of the girls mentions that there is something she wants to check. Meanwhile, the young man quietly observes the battlefield and the fallen goblins around them. His attention moves toward the bodies scattered across the ground. Looking closer, he picks up a small object from one of the goblins. The sight of the remains is unpleasant, and one of the girls admits that she does not want to look at the mess. Understanding her reaction, he calmly tells her that she does not need to force herself to watch if she feels uncomfortable. Akihiro kneels beside the body of a goblin and begins examining what it was carrying. A few pieces of gathered food lie nearby, but something feels unusual. The amount is small, and the goblin's stomach appears mostly empty. Liz observes the scene while thinking about the strange condition of the creature. Looking at another fallen goblin, the young man finds the same result. Its stomach is nearly empty as well. The discovery confirms that this was not a normal hunting group. Both girls watch carefully as he studies the bodies and the surrounding area, trying to understand what the pattern means. Goblins likely follow a hierarchical structure. Someone among them appears to be organizing their actions and forcing them to gather food, suggesting the presence of a commanding leader nearby. Adventurers Guild building stands as the location for an important gathering. Inside the meeting room, several adventurers from different parties sit around a large table. Guild staff and participants quietly take their seats while waiting for the meeting to begin. A young adventurer suddenly enters the room in a hurry. His arrival draws brief attention from the others, but the situation quickly settles. At the front of the room, the guild representative prepares to start the meeting now that most of the participants are present. The late arrival explains the reason for his delay. Earlier that day, he and his companions had already traveled into the forest to hunt monsters. Because they left early, the summons notice posted that morning went unnoticed. Around the table, the adventurers quietly observe one another. Several parties are present, and each group appears to represent a different rank within the guild. The number of teams gathered in the room suggests that the upcoming mission will require cooperation between multiple groups. Attention shifts as one adventurer carefully studies the newcomer. At the same time, a 7th rank adventurer raises his hand and steps forward. Since no other 7th rank members are present, he takes responsibility for leading the mission. The guild representative raises his hand and reminds everyone that the information shared in the meeting must remain confidential. The room grows quiet as the adventurers listen carefully. He then asks if anyone has objections before continuing the briefing. Attention turns to the main issue. According to the report, a group of goblins is expected to raid a nearby village 3 days from now at noon. The situation has already been explained in the summons notice sent earlier. In response, the kingdom has also dispatched knights who are expected to arrive around noon on the same day. However, the exact arrival time of the knights remains uncertain. Some adventurers around the table exchange glances while considering the problem. When asked about additional reinforcements, the representative explains that only a few more parties are expected to arrive on time. A nearby participant notes that only a little more than a dozen adventurers have responded to the call. Compared to the scale of the mission, the number seems limited. Several adventurers quietly judge the situation. Some begin whispering that the pale young man appears to be an inexperienced 9th rank adventurer. Others who ask questions with confidence seem more likely to belong to the 8th rank. A heavily armored adventurer stands and proposes a plan for preparation. In his view, protecting the village will require proper coordination between every party involved. Because of this, he suggests conducting a full training exercise the following day. Soon after, a young adventurer named Akihiro introduces himself as a 9th rank member. Earlier, he received the guild's plan and had already begun preparing possible countermeasures. Raising his hand during the meeting, he supports the idea of the exercise and shows readiness to participate in the preparation. Around the table, several adventurers quietly react to the discussion. Some remember hearing rumors about Akihiro and the unusual number of goblins he had recently defeated. Others begin considering the challenges of group combat. Akihiro continues sharing his thoughts on teamwork. Maintaining proper spacing between fighters becomes an important point, especially when facing large groups of enemies. While a few adventurers seem puzzled by his confidence, others appear to agree with the reasoning and begin to take the idea seriously. After the discussion ends, the guild representative announces the conclusion of the meeting. Adventurers slowly leave the room while preparing for the training scheduled the next day. The stranger quickly recognizes him and confirms his identity. Surprised by the sudden attention, Akihiro pauses and tries to understand the situation. He speaks with strong admiration toward Akihiro. In his view, Akihiro's recent achievements, such as defeating dangerous monsters and handling difficult situations, have spread widely among adventurers. Locke continues expressing excitement while praising Akihiro's abilities. He also mentions the strategic ideas Akihiro shared during the meeting earlier. To Lot, those suggestions showed impressive understanding of group combat and battlefield positioning. While listening, Akihiro quietly reflects on the conversation. Lot begins considering whether Akihiro might actually be a skilled scout based on the way he analyzes battles and enemy movements, then suggests that Akihiro might work well with his party, especially in a scouting role. Akihiro calmly explains that he currently does not belong to a party. After a brief exchange, both adventurers part ways for the moment, each preparing for the upcoming training exercise. Outside the guild building, the meeting finally ends as evening approaches. Adventurers begin leaving the hall one by one, thinking about the training exercise planned for the next day. Later that day, Akihiro visits a workshop to check on a weapon he requested earlier. The craftsman greets him and presents a newly finished spear. Akihiro carefully examines the weapon, lifting it to inspect the structure and balance, while confirming that the modifications were completed as requested. The craftsman laughs and reminds him that the work was only a small service. However, he also points out that the weapon now includes stronger reinforcement and improved accuracy. As night falls, Akihiro walks through a quiet forest while holding the spear. He reflects on the upcoming battle and considers the possibility that the goblin commander might possess resistance to magic. If that happens, relying only on spells would become ineffective. To solve this problem, Akihiro reveals the weapon's true modification. The spearhead has been hollowed and filled with compressed wind bullets, turning the weapon into a powerful jet-like tool. With the mechanism ready, he prepares to activate it and test the weapon's ability. In the quiet forest at night, Akihiro tests the modified spear he prepared earlier. The weapon launches forward with powerful force, flying straight through the air. Watching the result, he confirms that the mechanism works as intended, even though he is unsure how effective it will be during real combat. The next day, Akihiro returns to the village. Near one of the houses, a young woman greets him while carrying a basket of bread. She casually remarks that he returned quite late the previous night. Inside the house, the conversation shifts to the goblin threat approaching the village. The older man in the household already knows about the situation and has heard that the information came from the guild meeting. As the village leader responsible for defense, he explains that he is aware of the kingdom's orders and will oversee the village's protection. Akihiro carefully describes the current situation to him. The explanation helps clarify the expected arrival of reinforcements and the role of the adventurers in defending the area. While listening nearby, Liz quietly processes the information. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, she prepares herself, knowing that she may soon be involved in the coming battle as well. Inside the house, the discussion about the upcoming battle becomes serious. Akihiro firmly declares that he will protect Liz even if it risks his own life. The father listens in silence, thinking carefully about the situation. Liz quickly reacts to the tension. With a determined expression, she steps forward and insists that both of them must return safely. Her resolve fills the room, showing that she refuses to let either of them face danger alone. After a moment of silence, the father finally speaks. Although his expression remains stern, he gives his approval. However, he sets a clear condition: no matter what happens, the two of them must return together. Later that day, preparations for the training exercise begin. Liz and the others gather with Akihiro to discuss their positions and movement. The rehearsal will involve practicing coordination with other parties while responding to signals from the guild's bell and drums. The following morning arrives as Akihiro walks through the village streets. While he prepares himself mentally for the coming training, a familiar voice suddenly calls out to him from behind, greeting him warmly and marking the start of another busy day. Early in the morning, Akihiro prepares to head toward the training grounds. Lot appears and briefly checks on him before the exercise begins. Since Lot plans to support from the rear during the drill, he cannot directly observe Akihiro's movements. Soon after, the participants gather at the training area. Many adventurers from different parties stand around the field. While guild staff prepare the exercise, the total number of people present reaches around 100. The leader raises his weapon and announces the start of the training exercise. Adventurers quickly move into their assigned positions. The drill begins as each party prepares to act according to the planned defense strategy. The group gathered in the forest as the training session finally began. Everyone prepared themselves for the difficult exercise ahead. The young man moved forward with the others while carrying a heavy log on his shoulder. Sweat slowly covered their faces as the pace increased. Drum signals suddenly changed the movement pattern. He quickly shifted position while the others struggled to keep up with the instructions. During the rapid movement, the blonde girl lost her balance and fell hard onto the ground after moving the wrong direction. The training stopped for a moment as the others checked on her condition. Akihiro watched quietly, already expecting mistakes during the first practice. Akihiro listened as the others complained about the difficult group training. Most of them had never experienced coordinated movement before joining the army. A memory from childhood suddenly returned to him. He remembered practicing group exercises in school and realized the training felt very familiar. Hours passed as the squad repeated the same drills inside the forest. Their movements slowly became smoother and easier to follow. Although the formation improved, Akihiro still felt the exercise lacked practical value for real combat situations. Wanting to prepare everyone properly, Akihiro stepped forward and suggested a more realistic training method for the group. Akihiro divided the group into defenders and goblins to create a practical combat exercise for everyone. Some soldiers questioned the purpose of the strange training, but Akihiro calmly explained the rules and assigned wooden weapons to both sides. He reminded them that facing a large armed group created heavy pressure during battle. The exercise was meant to prepare them for that fear. Soon, nearly 100 people gathered together as the goblin side formed a massive crowd in the open field. The goblin group suddenly charged forward while shouting loudly. Watching the overwhelming advance, the defenders immediately felt the pressure Akihiro wanted them to experience. The goblin group rushed forward while shouting loudly, forcing the defenders to react under heavy pressure for the first time. After the exercise ended, several soldiers admitted they became overwhelmed by fear. Even though they understood it was only training, the commanders praised Akihiro's idea because the exercise taught the soldiers how to endure the pressure of large enemy groups. As the sun slowly lowered, the training session finally came to an end. Everyone received instructions to think about better ways to respond in battle. While the others returned together through the forest path, one of the commanders quietly called Akihiro aside for another discussion. After the training ended, the two girls cheerfully left to continue practicing their teamwork while promising to meet Akihiro again later. Akihiro watched them leave with a tired smile as the black-haired commander commented on their endless energy. The commander then shared important news about a goblin group moving together under organized leadership near the fort. He explained that the enemy force would likely arrive around noon in 2 days, leaving little preparation time for everyone. As mounted soldiers hurried across the road to deliver reports, the atmosphere around the fort quickly became far more serious than before. The commander explained that the enemy's movement speed forced the fort to hold its position for several hours until reinforcements arrived. Akihiro quietly accepted the situation, understanding that effort alone would not suddenly change their chances in battle. The next day, the party resumed coordinated training deep inside the forest before the enemy reached the area. They repeatedly practiced formation battles while discussing mistakes and improving their teamwork. After every exercise, during another drill, one girl sensed many presences moving through the forest. Their strange and complicated movements immediately made everyone feel uneasy. Akihiro noticed the number of enemies inside the forest was far greater than the day before, so he decided to reduce unnecessary fighting. After defeating another goblin group, he ordered the girls to rest properly and save their strength for the coming battle. Night quietly covered the village while Akihiro prepared his weapons alone inside his room. Sitting beside his spear and sword, he understood that the real clash against the goblin army would finally begin tomorrow. After checking his skills and preparations one last time, Akihiro accepted that nothing more could be done before the battle, although uneasiness still remained in his mind. Before sleeping, Akihiro remained uneasy because they still knew very little about the enemy army gathering outside the fort. Late at night, the blonde girl quietly visited his room because she wanted to talk about something important before the coming battle. She reminded Akihiro about the day they first met and the unexpected marriage proposal he once made to her. Although Akihiro looked shocked and embarrassed, the girl admitted she already understood his feelings even back then, remembering how warmly he accepted her and introduced her to the village. She realized she had slowly started wishing their marriage could truly happen someday. The blonde girl admitted that even without hearing his answer, she had already become proud of being considered Akihiro's future partner. After apologizing softly, she lowered her head while Akihiro remained frozen, unable to understand her feelings completely. Akihiro suddenly stopped her, insisting that she had nothing to apologize for, because his feelings toward her were genuine from the beginning. He explained that although the sudden proposal surprised him, meeting her in this strange world had truly made him happy. Still embarrassed, Akihiro confessed that his values from his old world made him see 15-year-olds as children, which was why he hesitated until now. The blonde girl finally confessed that she would continue loving Akihiro no matter what happened after the battle. Akihiro awkwardly admitted he still could not fully see her as a marriage partner, though he no longer rejected the possibility completely. Wanting everyone to survive tomorrow's battle safely, she asked him to return together with the whole group because she still wanted to spend more time beside him. After saying everything she truly felt, the girl quietly left the room and wished Akihiro good night with a relieved smile. Left alone beneath the silent night sky, Akihiro could only admit to himself that girls in this world were far stronger than he expected. Akihiro's fear slowly disappeared, but his heart still raced uncontrollably while remembering the girl's confession from earlier that night. A peaceful morning began when a young girl greeted the household with a cheerful expression, bringing warmth to the start of the day. Around the dining table, the family enjoyed breakfast together while preparing for the plans ahead. After finishing the meal, Akihiro and the girl equipped themselves and got ready to leave. What appeared to be an ordinary morning was now leading them toward an important mission. At the same time, the others decided to evacuate to the church, taking precautions as uncertainty approached. Before departing, they shared heartfelt farewells. A comforting embrace eased their worries, while Akihiro accepted the responsibility of protecting others and stepped forward with determination. Before leaving, the woman reminded Akihiro to value his own safety first. Even so, she hoped he would protect Liz if the opportunity came. Drawing both of them close, she treated Akihiro as family and asked him to return safely. With determination in his heart, Akihiro vowed to bring Liz back home. The couple watched from outside the house as the two departed. Along the road, Liz appeared unusually cheerful, despite the situation. Meanwhile, Akihiro carried the weight of the coming battle. As they continued their journey, he wondered if she felt afraid. To his surprise, Liz admitted her fear while still moving forward beside him. Liz admitted that the journey frightened her. Yet traveling beside Akihiro gave her happiness and strength to keep moving forward. Hearing her honest feelings, Akihiro was caught off guard. As Liz smiled brightly, he realized her courage might be greater than his own. Upon reaching town, they met Eri and Wattis, two familiar mages, who welcomed Akihiro and quickly shared the latest situation. Soon, the group discussed their available forces. With only a handful of mages participating, the coming operation seemed far smaller than Akihiro had expected. After everyone assembled, a commander explained that a scout unit was already drawing the goblins toward the planned battlefield. The gathered force then prepared to move out. While waiting with the others, Akihiro noticed that Ifie seemed uneasy. Although everyone appeared calm on the surface, nervousness was slowly spreading through the group. Trying to encourage her, Akihiro reminded Fia to do her best as always. Her confident response reassured him, and he remembered that both Fia and Liz possessed remarkable strength. Not long afterward, the adventurers reached a wide field, where they would make their stand against the approaching enemy. As the fighters raised their spirits, the commander explained the plan. Their task was to block the goblins and prevent them from reaching the village until reinforcements arrived. After taking positions, Akihiro organized his small team. Knowing they had to hold the line for hours, everyone prepared for the battle ahead. As the adventurers waited in formation, a scout suddenly spotted movement ahead and warned everyone that the enemy had finally arrived. Moments later, a massive goblin force emerged from the distance. The sight stunned the defenders as the number far exceeded their expectations. Reports quickly spread through the ranks. More than 300 goblins formed the main group, while hundreds more advanced around the flanks. Realizing the scale of the threat, fear began to spread among the adventurers. Their confidence weakened as doubts about surviving the battle surfaced. Seeing morale collapse, Akihiro concluded that the line would break immediately if nothing changed. Leaving his companions behind, he rushed toward the front to take action himself. Ignoring the confusion behind him, Akihiro rushed toward the advancing goblins alone. After reaching the enemy, he activated his magic and targeted the nearest goblin. The spell struck instantly, dropping the creature before it could react. Without stopping, Akihiro unleashed the same attack across the front ranks. Several goblins collapsed, while the others slowed as disorder spread through their formation. Satisfied with the result, he turned back toward the defenders. The crowd stared in disbelief as he calmly returned from the battlefield. Once he reached the line, Akihiro announced that he had already eliminated 10 goblins. Akihiro loudly declared that victory was possible. His confidence spread through the frightened adventurers, restoring the courage they had nearly lost. Inspired by his words, the defenders regained their fighting spirit. Fear gave way to determination as they prepared to face the enemy together. Returning to his team, Akihiro found Liz and Fie ready for battle. With everyone focused once more, the group advanced to their assigned positions. Soon, the commander gave the order to attack. Archers, mages, and support units immediately began launching their attacks toward the approaching goblin horde. Fia charged forward without hesitation while spells and arrows struck from behind. As goblins fell across the battlefield, the defenders finally began their counterattack. Liz fought at the front with steady determination. Her shield and sword moved without hesitation as she cut down goblins that broke through the line. After pushing the enemy back, Akihiro ordered a temporary retreat. The adventurers quickly withdrew, leaving dozens of goblin bodies scattered across the field. 30 minutes had passed since the battle began. Although around 50 goblins had been defeated, another hour and a half remained before reinforcements could arrive. Gathering with Liz and Fia, Akihiro reviewed the situation. The constant movement and pressure were exhausting everyone faster than expected, before they could rest for long. Another goblin group appeared in the distance. Seeing the endless wave approaching, Akihiro wondered how much longer their force could endure.